All right, we should be live now, assuming that everybody can hear us. Make sure I have chat up. Yeah, we shouldn't be. Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to do some more Elden Ring tonight. I'm going to hopefully play a new character. I'm going to try and do a strength-based one. I know the game's been out. Well, so I have multiple characters going, usually concurrently for Souls games. So my main is a Dex build, but I'm going to try and do some strength stuff tonight. Hopefully. Yeah, it's kind of hard to, I guess, like pick other builds when you're used to one thing. I know that I'm gonna try it out. So, for anyone that is in chat, we're also trying out some new features so that the stream starting soon card is something new. We're also gonna try out, hopefully follower and subscriber and stuff alerts works now. We don't do any sort of subscription bonus, but at least for followers, I want to try and get some sort of like live alert thing to happen. So I'm gonna try some of that out. So if there's any audio issues, please let us know. Um, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna do a strength build. Hey, Ian. Yeah, I'm gonna try my strength build character tonight. I already started a second magic one. Hey, you should be. I just have desktop audio. Let me check the Twitch stream real quick. So say something now. Yeah, let me see if I can't like patch you in somehow. That's weird that it's not doing. Oh, I know what it is.
Oh yeah.
All right. So how about now? I had to
Okay.
mute the desktop audio.
Oh really? You had to. Okay. Let me double check. Oh wait. Yep. I hear my voice. Oh wait. Yep. Yep. I hear my voice. Ian, you can. Can we? I'm sure we can hear you if you can hear me, right?
Yep, I can hear you guys.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, cool. That's what I was hoping for. All right. So assuming that everyone can at least hear it, if volume levels are off, please let us know, and I can fix those in OBS real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as usual, community, be our tech support.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
For when I can't.
Oh.
This is
Yeah,
the beauty
I
of
think-
being a totally unpaid channel. Like, we don't have
Just
to be that
do it.
sorry about it. You guys are getting this for free.
Yeah. Exactly.
It is nice in the
we're-
sense that it makes the setup a lot easier, but having multiple people streaming is what makes it inconsistent. And I wish there was a way that we could just like share an OBS profile. That'd be awesome.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we all have different like rigs. We got different setups and shit.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's the problem is that it wouldn't be able to detect mics, but yeah,
Yeah.
maybe someday they'll make something.
Oh.
All right, so I'm aiming for mostly a purely strength build. For anyone that's played Elden Ring for the first few hours, there is a lot of stuff that seems to prioritize like strength or any sort of melee build. Like a lot of the Ashes of War, especially. I feel like the first like 5 I got were all made for strength characters. So I'm gonna try.
I know the one I'm using the most is the quick step right now.
I just now started using that.
It's awesome.
I wasn't sure at first because my main build is Dex with I dual wield claws, and it comes with that automatically. But I wasn't sure because I figured, well, if it uses up both stamina and magic, why would I want to do that when I could just dodge instead?
Have either of you guys found the Bloodhound step yet?
I have not.
Oh,
are you talking about
boy.
the Everjail with the?
It's no.
Sorry?
We found that. It's the you know how he blink steps around? You can do that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I saw some samurai build people trying to do that recently.
If you guys like fast play and you like if you like the quick step, find yourself a Bloodhound step because that will level that shit up.
What the fuck am I looking at, Tom?
Wow, it looks like Hellboy.
I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. I'm looking at Hidetaka Miyazaki's very diligent work on his graphic engine, and I mean, it looks good to me. I don't know. Is there some sort of glitch going on with the video?
I love the hat on him too. That does it for me.
Is it?
Oh, it's funny.
Oh, I think it looks all right. Chat, weigh in if you think that something's up with my video here.
Amazing.
Yeah. So this is Beef. This is based on.
He looks
Where
like
is he?
He looks like a Darth Maul character from Dathomir.
Oh, yeah.
I can see that. Yeah. Is it because of the jaundice? Is that what causes this?
Yes, it's that,
the
and
red
it's also
jaundice.
the his starting gear, like his starting armor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Looks like Dathomir dudes.
Yeah, I guess you're right. He's got one piece of metal and he put it on his shoulder.
Yeah, and he doesn't, and he's got it on the same shoulder where he has his shield. That
shield, yeah. No. Oh,
that is one thing I do have as like a qualm for the armor is like the hero armor. Like when it says hero, that doesn't really look like a hero to me. I don't know. I mean, that's just maybe the translation, but I was like, when it says hero and then vagabond, they kind of seem like the same thing to me. You know, I'm not. I get stat wise why that's the case, but I was like, why would you need both of these? You could just be doing one or the other.
Yeah,
the white screen. Yeah, the white screen is when you're clicked off the game, right?
Is it okay? I'm doing something on the Twitter account real quick before I forget.
Okay, I'm just confirming that it is what you.
So while you do this, I want to talk about my evolving feelings on this game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, please go ahead and start that whenever.
So if you guys recall, I was a little cooler on it than I wanted to be when it first came out, right?
Yep, I recall.
I will say that I do think that this game improves at the deeper you get into it. I think the combat improves as you build your character. I think there are a lot of customizing options.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Makes that better. However, I don't think that necessarily excuses how incomplete it is early in game. So, because early in game, I still maintain that certain builds and certain playstyles are just locked out effectively of some of the most important mechanics.
Interesting, because I've been listening to a lot of chatter on different people's opinions. They're like, "Oh, Dex is overpowered, intelligence is overpowered," or some shit.
Well, I don't know that it's one type of skill necessarily that's over or underpowered. My feeling is that basically it's like I do think that poise in early game is way too important. Not just your poise, but specifically enemies' poise. I actually find that enemies' poise becomes less and less important as the game goes on.
Okay.
But again, that might have something to do with the build you've chosen, but I think the enemy's poise does become slightly less important as the game goes on, which I feel sort of levels the playing field for different builds, fortunately. Because, like, again, that the guard counter is one of what people think is like one of the big innovations of this game. Mm-hmm. If you're not a shield user, the guard counter is effectively non-existent.
I don't.
Yeah,
I
I'm literally
like
experiencing that now.
Notes guard countering or whatever, and I was like, I've not even done it once.
And people will argue with me because they'll say, "Well, you can still guard counter if you're not using shield." Yeah, you can, but the cost benefit of that makes it not worth doing because you take so much chip damage, especially because
your swords. Yeah.
My God, enemies in this game, boy, do they hit hard. Everybody in this game.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Most people can one-shot you.
Mm-hmm.
Vigor is way more important than it's ever been in any of the other games, in my opinion. You need to be tankier than usual. So there's that.
What I understand, when you level up your health, you get a lot per level, though.
You do, yeah. And I think where you need to be end game, I think minimum is around 30. That's minimum.
Really?
I think ideally you want to be around anywhere between 50 and 60, I think. Especially if you want to compete in PvP. I think you need to be around 50 or 60. So there's that. I will say that it, like I said, I think it opens up a good amount as you get later in the game. I mean, I feel like the Bloodhound step really opens up a whole play style that just isn't available until you get to that part of the game. And then, but I still think it's a shame that it's still locked behind FP cost, right?
Yeah.
So like
that is a problem.
Yeah, so it forces you, if you really want to use that style of play, you really have to dump a lot of your stats into mind, which is fine because it's actually, believe it or not, I've actually been dabbling in Magic a little bit.
It's hard not to in this game with how much they've offered.
Yeah, well, when you have to spec so hard into focus points, into mind, it's like, well, I've got this giant FP bar. I should probably also
something
use
with
it
it.
for use it for Magic too. So I've been specking a little bit into Faith actually.
I think I was gonna go Faith my next build. I get the feeling I want to be a paladin. At some point.
I did a paladin recently.
I mentioned this on our Discord today, but there is some flashy shit in Faith, man. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff I'm seeing. I want to become an Ire Zealot. Have you guys seen that shit?
I don't think so.
Okay. So Tom, it's basically laser version of your claws, but it's faith based. And they're like golden or whatever.
There's those fist weapons that are the word of God or whatever, right?
Have you seen Flame Frenzy yet? Have you seen any of the Flame Frenzy powers yet?
I went to that hill, the ones that shoot fire out of their eyes. Yes, I went there. So, I have the spell.
What are you guys even talking about?
I have a spell that I use quite a bit. It's just fucking Cyclops.
Yeah.
It's literally. So cool. It's so cool.
So guys, this is harkening back. This game right now in this time and place is harkening back to the days of like N64 era where the internet wasn't well known yet, and like Triforce servers of the Ocarina of Time have been exactly like, oh, have you guys gone to this place yet? No, but if you go to like the direct side of the map and place a bomb perfectly, right? Yeah, a little bit like that. Yeah, a little bit like that. Yeah. It's really interesting. It's really cool to feel that way again. Because like some of the best like gamers out there are scraping this thing as best they can, and they're still not finding everything.
Yeah, it's a huge ass game. I haven't shared my map with you guys yet. I pretty much opened up the entire map now.
Oh yeah,
it's so big. It's so big. There's so much to explore.
What is it? Is it the Sophia Lake or Sophia
Lake? Sophia or something like that?
Yeah,
I'm underneath the whatever place, and it's all fucking Fantasia down there.
I hit the Grace site, and I was like, all right, I'll come back later, and that was like 20 hours ago, and I still.
It's so cool down there, man.
I'm not gonna spoil anything for you there, but I'm just gonna let you know the underground part of this game, the part that you found, it's twice as big as you think it is.
Oh, really? Okay.
There's like 4 times I saw a tweet like this, and it literally happened to me. That was like, I've hit a point every few hours in this game where like the map will expand, and I just say, "Oh my god, it's still going."
Yeah, and it's like, in order to like, I just don't. And exploration isn't actually that easy because everywhere you go, you're threatened by shit. So like, to explore the entire game is a crazy task. Like, it's insane.
You have to get proficient against fighting everyone.
For me, I fall into that Skyrim syndrome of like, I know I could guess what's around the corner in terms of like the small stuff, like the caves and whatnot, and I'll still go and do it, even though I know like, oh, there's nothing over in this corner. But I have to check. Like, it's morbid curiosity or something. I'll just go over there and be like, yeah, all right. There's like literally 3 plants over here that I get 100 of everywhere else, but I'm still gonna go and check it because I gotta make sure.
And it's not like they've like nerfed any or like made any easier the typical Dark Souls style questing.
No.
Like, because I did a quest today, like accidentally. I would never have known to do this quest properly on purpose. Like, I just stumbled into it accidentally because I hit the button a couple extra times than I was expecting to, and I stumbled into some extra lines of dialogue that procced something that wouldn't have been procced otherwise. I'm like, how much am I missing? Like, how much have I just walked by that I didn't even know?
This game is FOMO for sure.
It's crazy.
It is. Well, I'm watching streams usually when I play it too, and I'm trying to decide how much spoilers am I gonna like let myself see. Because the impossible part is knowing like what someone's gonna do, because you can do everything in almost any order.
And people are gonna be like, "Well, that's Dark Souls." I'm like, "Yeah, that's my point. They didn't nerf any of the Dark Souls. It's Dark Souls, except now that whole mechanic
Yeah.
is in an open world, which is like
Now,
because before
now
Dark Souls,
there's no through line.
right, you would typically at least stumble across it easier because it was linear. But now it's like you could just totally miss it. You could go the
Yeah.
whole game without getting your Wondrous Physic. It is possible to do that.
I just got
I
it
can see
last night
that.
because I
Yeah.
had to go out of my way to go get it.
I will say the wondrous physic is something that has definitely like helped me before, but it's something that I forget about a lot until I put it on my pouch.
Mhm.
Like I almost never think about it because like I keep changing up the abilities. So for a while I had on like the
Mhm.
stamina regen, and then I had on like the half health or like the bubble shield thing that you get
Mhm.
eventually. And
Yeah, that's what I have. I have it as 50% health healing and then bubble shield for a free hit.
yeah, I had it as health regen and the bubble, and then I realized that it can also be
Mhm.
counterintuitive in the sense that like it's
Yeah.
supposed to like help regen my health, but when I take that first hit and the shield breaks it, the healing's not even working because I'm under the shield the entire time with full health. So I'm trying to make that more part of my gameplay, especially as Dex, because I
Oh
already
yeah,
have so
no.
many stamina
Yeah,
boosting
for
things
me
that I don't need.
it's part of my boss learning structure. Like I'll go fight him and test him out, and then when they hit me, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take one swig of this guy because I only got one shot, and then I tap into all the other stuff after that.
Right.
Tom, this guy is so vibrant.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
certainly is. I
he's really
saw a
vibrant.
video the other day of someone who was like completely cyan or
He's
like a
so
light
punchy.
blue. It was
Hmm.
hard to look at actually. How was the video
He's
for
like a
you
World of
guys?
Warcraft character.
Yeah, he looks like an orc.
Yeah, but like a Blood Rage orc or something, whatever the hell they're called.
I have my graphic settings on like mostly like medium to low just because of the object loading. So
Hmm.
if it looks weird or if it's kind of stuttery through Discord, just let me know.
So far so good.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
shit. I have
Yeah,
not.
man.
I played a little bit of
You,
this last
Like
night.
you gonna beat this guy, Tom?
Oh fuck no! I
fight
although I did
him,
come
fight
close on my
him.
mage. Surprisingly, I got
He
like a third of
basically
his
two
health
hits
down.
you. He basically two hits you. You have to perfect him if you want to win this.
Ooh, okay, yeah,
Hits
no.
landed. Hits landed.
I got a hit. It's better. I
But
think
like,
on my very first character, the night it came out, I didn't even get a hit
mhm.
because my graphic settings were so high. He literally was like phasing in and out of existence. So I was just like, all
Yes.
right. Oh wait, no, damn.
Okay. So like this is definitely not in the cave of knowledge, like in the very like what your actual beginning is.
I was gonna say, Ian, do we ever go back to wherever that was?
Since you're asking, yes, you do. You
Okay,
can. It's
that's what I
optional. You
figured
don't have
because there's
to.
a locked door there, and I was
Yeah.
hoping it wasn't just some tutorial island that we never see again.
Mhm.
No, it's like so much in this game. It's not mandatory, but yes, you can go back.
Ah, okay,
Okay.
okay.
So I did get my revenge on that motherfucker.
Yeah. That's
Oh, I
my
was gonna
eventual
say
goal.
there's the one. I should have put a no spoiler warning, although I don't think there's anyone in chat at the moment. But at some point, you see one of
Yeah.
those again, but it's definitely not there. And that fight alone was pretty tough.
Yeah, you see, actually, I think there are a few of those out in the world. In the closed network test, there was one in Stormvale, and then
Some
they replaced that one. The one that was in Stormvale, they replaced it with a. They actually moved it to a different part of Stormvale, and then they replaced the previous one with a really fucking huge like angel knight, like paladin knight.
Oh, okay. So they moved some enemies around since the
Yeah,
network test.
definitely.
So when I first did this, I didn't actually come to this part, like fall down this hole until like after 5 hours. Because when I first read the or talked to the ghost there, I thought this was like some try hard boss like the crystal lizards from Dark Souls 3, and I just never did it. Because I was like, well, I'm not gonna slam my head against the wall for no reason. So I'm just gonna skip this. And then I came back and it was like, oh, it's a whole tutorial. I thought it was a boss. I had to find out about like the sites of grace and all that just on my own.
On your own, just figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you guys? I mean, yeah. Have you guys gone through the gargoyle walled off area? You have to come
Which part
back.
of the map is that in?
Well, when the cave of knowledge, where you have there's a gargoyle statue off to your right. If you're trying to go back up the elevator,
Shit, really?
um, there's a like a fog wall off area. Have you guys gone through that yet?
Uh,
I mean, I've killed a whole
in the
bunch of
Cave of
gargoyles.
Knowledge?
In the cave of knowledge, you're probably going to come
Yes.
up to it here and eventually.
I
Okay.
did finally do that. I watched the first time I watched someone stream it, they were doing that. I didn't know where it was. and I just like a week ago did that part.
Oh, really?
Because
Have you done the whole thing?
there was a boss at the end, if that's the whole
Yeah,
thing. Yeah, so I did
the
that.
root spirit.
I did that boss, and then there's another one of almost the exact same boss in a different place, and I did them back to back after I fucking died to the first one like 20 times.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so but that was when I finally figured out my build with the claws and how to do blood buildup, and I just
Hmm.
shredded them both. But I struggled for a while against the other one. That took me some time. Come on.
Yeah, that one. I was like, I did the first half of it where you go up and you fight like the souped up spirit knight, and then I later found out by watching somebody else go the other way. I was like, oh, other boss. All right, guys,
Right.
I got to step out for a bit. I will hopefully get back to you guys here in a
Oh
bit,
yeah,
but
yeah, no problem.
I'll see you.
I'll be on the
All right,
call, so just join whenever.
all right, later, guys.
See you. All right. I've been taking my sweet ass time with this tutorial, but I just kind of wanted to
Well, I'm curious now, Tom.
over
Like,
this.
what's your since you've played a little bit in like the first part of this game, where are you going to go first now?
So that's actually what I was thinking about before. Because I'm doing a strength build, I don't. Unfortunately, my memory does not remember where all the talismans and all the armaments come from. But
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking what I'll do first is obviously I'm not gonna struggle against the tree sentinel. But what I'm thinking about doing is just doing a quick passover of most of Limgrave,
Hmm.
and then just like get some of those side caves and quests done, and then basically just unlock everything up to like the entrance of Stormvale, and then I'm just gonna try and go like south, go to the Weeping Peninsula, go to might dip into not Caelid, but I'll dip into a little bit of like Liurnia and just try and get most of that strength stuff out of the way if I can.
Have you been up in the north of the map very much?
Um, the most north I've been is probably just above the Rhea Lucaria.
Yeah.
I went backwards. My bad. I've gone there. I haven't actually. I'm on my main character. I'm going through it right now, but I think the most north I've been is like just above that school where I got shot by something the other day. I was going through the woods on the east side of Liurnia, and like for
Yeah.
whatever fucking reason, I got shot by like a giant arrow the size of a
What,
spear.
like a spirit arrow?
Yeah, and I got
Yeah.
hit by that, and I was like, all right, well, I'm not gonna fuck with that at the moment because it took out like a third of my health in one shot.
Yeah, those things are pretty much, even at my level now, they are still like life threatening. Just getting shot with one of them, and they have unbelievable tracking. Like they
Oh,
they
really?
will snipe you from a million miles away, even if you're like serpentining
Oh
crazy.
shit. Okay, I noticed because the bears that are like right before that area, the ones in Liurnia, I used to like four shot the regular sized bears with those claws
Yeah,
because of the blood buildup, and then I tried to fight one of the big ones, and I swear to God, it was like it took like double the time, and even then I died like multiple times before I could even do it.
yeah, those dudes are mean.
I didn't
Uh,
realize they would reuse the same enemies and then scale up their health. 'Cause I don't know if another
yeah,
Dark Souls has done that because of the open world bit.
yeah, true. I mean, I guess they have in some places. Like they do sometimes when you have to go back to places that you've already been in. Like I think Dark Souls 3, like when you go back to like the dark version of the first part of the game.
Yeah,
Obviously, the
like before the
zombies there.
second Gunder. Yeah.
Yeah, but like that's not strictly the same area.
Right. It's a different like instance of it, I guess.
Yeah,
Which is it's interesting. It's almost like an MMO thing to do where you have the same like enemy, the same model and palette and stuff, but you just up the damage if they're in like a certain area. Which I
yeah,
didn't mind because it was kind of cool, like to come to Liurnia and think, oh, I've seen these guys before. This will be no problem. And then I try and take on the same bear on horseback with the claws that I did before, and it completely wrecked me. Like I was doing damage, but it wasn't as quick as I thought it was, and most of my
yeah.
build has been killing most things in two very specific strikes, and then if it takes any longer than that, I just sort of panic until it works out.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the other thing I've been learning in this game is that you really can't hang in there for very long. If you're going to be like a melee guy without a lot of armor or shields, like you need to get in, get your hits, and get the hell out because
Right.
you can basically get 2 hits, and that's about all you can do because most of the enemies in this game are not taking serious hits down.
I forgot to set up my pouch. That's gonna be a problem because I just try to hit Y and up, and there we go.
Hey, have you encountered like getting unhorsed in the middle of combat, and then when you want to call him back, it prompts you to like it asks like if this is gonna cost a flask, do you want to still do it?
Yeah, that's
Have you
only
seen
I've
that?
only been prompted like once, which I thought was weird because uh, I feel like I've lost my horse in combat before, and when I go to
Yeah.
resummon him, it never prompts me to
Sometimes he
do
just
the thing.
summons. Yeah, I've noticed that too. I don't know what that is. I think maybe it's like there's a difference between just getting unhorsed and actually your horse getting killed, right? Maybe that's the
Right.
difference. I don't know. But
Well,
either way, the horse disappears.
and I've experienced before where if you enter a certain place where it seems like there's a few scripted events where like a an invader comes in, even
Just
though it's
forces
just
you
a
off, yeah.
yeah. And so when
But
that happens, like I'll get dehorsed then, and I notice it
yeah,
because my horse will be at full health, like I haven't been hit on
right.
horseback yet, and then all of a sudden I'm just dehorsed.
I mean, the reason I ask is because I feel like I really hope they patch that menu out. So for anybody who listens to this later, like the issue I'm talking about is when you get your horse is killed in combat. When you want to call your horse back, you can call your horse back after he's been called after he's been killed.
Right.
But the when you press the horse caller and when you call your horse again, before it calls the horse, it brings up a menu that says this is going to cost an extra healing flask. Do you still want to proceed? And it's like, and then you say yes or no. And it's like, yeah, motherfucker, I
Yeah.
pressed the button. I
Right.
want
That's
him
what I
back.
want.
Just, I know this is gonna cost. Like, they should do it like they do in Zelda, which is like show it the first time and then never show it again. Now I know. I know it's gonna cost me. Don't ever show this menu again.
Right. Or at
Because
least like
usually
show it
it's
as like a
like
tooltip
right. Well, like
instead.
usually it's like when you're calling you when you want your horse back, it's like fucking panic mode, man. You need to get the hell out. And like I don't have time to be fumbling around this menu saying yes and reading shit. Like, yes, man, I pressed the button. I want it. Give me my horse
And
back.
it's a weird precedent to set for a Souls game before because usually when something happens in a Souls game, it just happens. The fact
Yeah, they don't
it's
like
cool
hold
that
your
you're
hand through.
informational, but like it's also interrupts the gameplay. It's like, well, I'd rather would just like figure it out when I go to heal, and then it's like,
Yeah,
why am I out of
it's
flask?
very handholdy. It's very handholdy.
Yeah, it is unusual because in the old games, like I mean, there are times where I would have wished for that, but not in the middle of combat, not like the way that they
Yeah,
do with
it's
that
weird
prompt.
where they decide to like be helpful and be
Yeah,
overt about stuff, and where they choose not to be overt about stuff.
right. It's an improvement in the thinking, but yeah, the execution is still kind of at some weird times. I've only had that prompt come up like twice, which is still the weirdest thing to me because I swear either my horse has died or I've accidentally like clicked in my stick and then
Yeah.
I jump off the horse
Oh,
because then I've
yes,
never been
Captain
prompted like any
Lance,
other
of
time. I've
course
just
you
brought him back
unfortunately
and I've
without
never paid attention to
guidance,
my flasks
so
enough to
you
know
are
if he did or
fated.
didn't.
Yeah, it definitely seems a little bit inconsistent. I'm not
Luckily for
sure
me,
what the thinking
I
is,
often
what
dream
exactly like
of
is happening
that.
in the hood there.
Hmm.
But anyway, I want that menu
Even
gone.
if it
If
Yeah.
I call my horse, man, I want my horse. Don't be
I
asking
know
me.
it's gonna be an annoyance for me later because I never I make those items. What are those things? I was not crafting yet. The item that you can heal your horse with, like the berries or whatever, and I
Aroa
almost
seed
never
berries,
use them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I never really use those either because it's like I'd have to dedicate another pouch slot to it, and there's other things I want to use. So I basically just use my because I believe the healing flask heals both you and your horse at the same time.
oh, okay. That I did not realize that. That's
Yeah, so the rose seed
Horse
is really
actually
just
is.
for healing your horse specifically, whereas I think the heal heals both of you.
right. Yeah, that's something I might need to do more of because I haven't done a whole lot. Like I fought stuff on horseback, but for the most part, because my claws are so up close, I would like use horseback to get close to an enemy and then just jump off and then
Yeah,
play regular Dark Souls. But I'm just now using I keep a twin blade as my second weapon, and I actually like it on the horse. It's not as direct as spears are. I've noticed something I've tried to pay attention to more is when I'm fighting a humanoid on horseback. I'm trying to aim at the humanoid, not the horse, because auto lock will
yeah,
just put you on the horse like right away. So I'm trying to actually like aim for the person and not the horse to take them out faster. But the problem with the moveset on that twin blade is like the first strike is like a down strike, like at your side.
yeah.
So it's almost made to kill the horse and not the person.
I also feel like the twin blades. I don't feel like I get enough reach with those.
Yeah, twin blades are weird because I like their light attack, light combo,
You're a
but they're in the jump the jump charge strike I like because it's just a stab, so you get that pierce. But yeah, they have a very weird range because I thought it would be longer than they are, and they're really not.
Yeah.
And I maybe that's just the nature of the twin blade itself, but I accidentally killed an NPC that admittedly is a boss at first, and so I got his weapon, which was like a +7 spear, and so I started using that on the horse. But even the spear range feels, I don't know if it's just the horseback, but the range of weapons on the horse feels weird because my claws reach about as good as my spear does.
Yeah, unfortunately, I like to stick to like the straight swords. The range on those, I feel like the range on those have been a little bit nerfed in this game too. Because
Yeah,
like if you have a light dodge, you make so much distance with that like you're hardly ever in range
oh
when you come
yeah,
to the dodge. It's crazy.
Nice to do business.
yeah the light dodge especially. The yeah it's I okay I love the crafting kit. Yeah, the range for certain weapons has seemed weird, but also I don't know if that's just chalking it up to being on a mount now instead of just being there on foot.
Yeah.
I will say though, I do like how when you're on horse, the first thing I tried to do when I got onto horseback and did combat against like these guys was I would try and just like stand there, or I would just circle around them endlessly. And then the actual tactic is much like real life, where it's like you need to do a hit and run thing and then come back in because that's how you aim.
Yeah.
You try and
You're
actually
playing-
circle around, you can't.
Yeah, you
Kill
play
stuff.
footsie a little bit. Like you sort of like the neutral game in fighting games. You're like trying to see which one can get frame advantage and get someone else to commit to an
Right.
offensive move, and you can counter it.
And-
That's the sort of fighting in Dark Souls that I like. But I feel like early game, you don't really have the tools enough to really do that very well.
right, you
It
really
takes
don't.
Yeah, but like I said before, I do think it opens up. Like once you get, I think the Bloodhound step really makes a huge difference to that.
Is that an Ash of War, or is that a specific only on a weapon?
It's an Ash of War. I can tell you where to get it if that's something that you want to get. You can actually run right there if you want to. The only problem is getting it can be a little bit tough because it's behind a tough enemy.
Is it? So, what region is it in?
It's
I think I might have
over
come
in.
close.
Yeah, it's over in. Let me check my map.
I was gonna say because I maybe I'm thinking of the weapon. There was one of the Everjails in Limgrave gives you a
Yeah.
curved greatsword, and I thought it was similar to that.
It's from. I'm trying to find the name of it. Like I'm looking at my map. I'm trying to so I can like point.
Is it a cave, or is it a like?
No, it's across a bridge. Where is that church?
Oh,
it's not that one. I'm looking at my map right now.
I feel like I've been there or I've passed by it, and I just haven't actually done the bit. Maybe.
Yeah, it's over in Liurnia. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, if it's in Liurnia, I think I have either passed it or I'm like about to go there.
Yeah, it's on the east side of Liurnia, I think. You cross a bridge where there's a dragon, and then you double back after you cross that bridge, and then you. I don't want to spoil anything if you guys don't like want to hear it, but
Okay, yeah.
it's on the east side of Liurnia.
Okay, that's what I figured. I'm fairly certain that I had passed it and I just never went in. I marked it on my map, but I never actually like made the effort to go inside and finish it. 'Cause I was trying to do something else, one other side thing. But I'm gonna have to go there and do that because I feel like I like quick step now that I've used it, just like the regular quick step. But
Well,
it took me a while to get used to it, really.
the amazing thing with the Bloodhound step is that it turns like when I was using quick step was good, but it was really more defensive. Like it didn't give you great positioning, and it didn't allow you to like get in on people really quickly.
Right. I thought of using it as like a different type of dodge.
Exactly. The Bloodhound step, on the other hand, is like you can use that shit super offensively, like because you can use it to get in, like dash almost, because you move. It doesn't just make you invisible; it also sends you farther, faster.
Okay, that's what I was curious about because I can see it as like a PvP thing where they just remove the frames where you're there, but it's like the same distance. I feel like the old ones maybe did that.
Yeah, and the recovery frames on it feel like even better than the quick step. So like you can almost spam it. And it basically, and from my testing, from my play, like if I'm spamming it, I basically am untouchable for as long as I'm doing it.
Oh, okay. I could see that because like I was watching some people play like doing other dex builds with it, and it seemed like it's I know it was very useful for PvP, but it seems like it also could be very useful for I mean just PvE if the iframes are better, which I'm glad to hear because I was worried that it was like a yeah, it's really cool, but it doesn't really do a lot for you in terms of defense.
Yeah, I think it's to me, I think it's one of the like I think there's a collection of like legendary Ashes of War that are just like really OP. I think Bloodhound Step is one of the OP Ashes of War. They're just like they're pretty endgame.
Oh,
The only
really?
problem
Okay.
is like, yeah, the only problem is like it means that you can't, if that's what you want to use, you can't really use any of the other like legendary weapons because a lot of those legendary weapons don't take regular ashes. So like there are certain swords and certain twin blades and things like that that they have built-in moves like special moves
Right.
that you can't assign other ashes to if they don't
Oh,
accept
right.
it.
I figured most of the boss weapons probably can't, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, they'll typically have a move that is exclusive to that weapon and can't be put on anything else, and you can't put anything else on that weapon. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but for me, it's like totally worth it because, goddamn, shit is
The only so I've only gotten the one um the first was it Great Rune? I guess the first remembrance from the first big boss. And there's that the fist weapon, which I do not have the
yeah.
faith to wield, but man, is it cool as hell.
Um, is that the coded weapon? Is it the
It's
coded fist weapon? Like
uh
it's like a because they've got a few that I liked. I like because I got early game. I got like a coated fist. Like there's just like a light, looks like a small sword.
you're not talking about like the word of God weapon, right? Like the Sypha
Yeah, I think
whatever.
that's the one I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I think that was the one that Nate was referring to too.
Because that one's pretty cool. They have a straight sword version of that too, which is really dope.
I would like to wield them, but I haven't done a lot of faith on my current dex build. Like I have some, but like
Yeah.
10, but just enough to hold like the
Have you done any
incantation thing.
respecking?
I haven't. I know that you can, and I know that I probably
Yeah.
will eventually. Um, if I do respec, I will splash into like some type of magic. But for the most part, like I wouldn't change up anything else about my build. I have enough vigor and dexterity to go. But that is something I do want to play with. Is like when I find the respec thing, I'm gonna try and put a few more points into faith, and then see if I can't wield those like the God
Yeah.
Fist weapons, and just like see if faith would be something that would help out with the dex build. Like I'm sure it would, but the reason why I didn't do it
Fist
is just
weapons
because I
are
was trying to
cool.
stick to my guns in the beginning.
Yeah, and I found the scaling on weapons to be a little bit weird with Ashes of War. Like it's hard to tell where your weapon's going to be, um, depending on how you want to scale it and what your build is.
Right.
Like I've got weapons that right now my longsword is actually like it has a I think a D like because of the Ash of War I'm using on it. It's I think it's scaling C in Faith, but it's way more powerful as a Faith weapon than as a quality weapon or a keen weapon or a heavy weapon.
Right.
Even though its base stats aren't, they don't. And it'll, for instance, it will. If I put a different Ash of War on it, it will say that it scales like to a B or an A in both strength and Dex. And if I
Right.
spec into strength and Dex, it'll give me one value for what my damage is going to be. But even though the weapon is scaling to a C in Faith, I'm still getting way more damage out of the Faith. It's really weird,
Yeah,
and I
I
don't
noticed
know
that because
where
I
those
was trying to
calculations.
do I found there's a certain whetstone that I've gotten like really early. I think it's in might be in Stormvale, the one that lets you basically pick whatever scaling, which is super dope. And
Yeah,
I got that super early, so I've been trying to do
Greetings,
keen builds or the dex based
traveler
scaling with like
from
almost every
beyond the
single
fog.
Ash of War to
I
see like
am
what
Melina.
the scaling would be in my dex. I leveled my deck super high, super early. By like level 20, early 20s, I had like 22 decks, where
Yeah.
my vigor was still like 16, 15. And I would do like the math comparison and like doing a quality or even a standard version of that Ash of War compared to a dex one
I
was like two
offer
points of
you an
damage.
accord.
Like it would change the number based on like the plus and the base damage, but it was like 1 or 2 points apart. And my
Have you
dex was
heard
way
of the
higher than my
Finger
strength by like
Maidens?
10 points at that point.
They
So
serve
yeah,
the
I've
two
started
fingers,
to pick up on that weird
offering
scaling that Ashes of
guidance
War have, because
and
whenever
aid
I check the or
to
I
the
try
tarnish.
the other versions of them, they don't
Like
seem
you, I
to
can play the role
like
turning
if I'm
weakness into
maining into
strength
Dex and I go from like
to aid
standard
you
to a
in your
keen
search for the
Ash of War,
Elden
the
Ring.
point difference for a while
You
has
need
been like
only
nothing.
take me with
It's like
you
I could
Yeah.
use either one and it's pretty much the same damage.
to the
And
Yeah,
even
it's
though
really
like the
soft.
weapon is already scaling like a B dexterity and E in strength,
Then it
it'll
settled
be like, oh, that's
suddenly
like an extra
by
like 5 points
grace.
of damage,
Ah,
Yeah,
which is
it's
another
really
interesting.
weird.
bequeath.
I'm wondering like what will happen when I max out
Use
the
it,
upgrade of my
it will
weapon and
summon a
see where
torrent
it will
test
actually end
frequent.
up. But for now,
Shall
it's
I
just very
turn your
confusing.
littler
Like it's hard for
hand?
me to
Share
tell
them with me.
what the best way to spec it out would be
Your
based on the Ash of
thoughts,
War that I'm using. Oh, by the
your
way, I
ambitions,
found where I got
the
the
principles you
Bloodhound
would
Step, and it's
follow.
actually not in Liurnia. It's actually in the far northeastern side of Caleb.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's probably why I haven't gotten to it. I thought about going to Caelid early for like I assuming there's more blood related stuff there or like
Well, it's
dark
one of
stuff.
the reason I thought it was Liurnia is because when you get there, it actually doesn't really look like the rest of Caelid as much. Like it
Huh.
looks somewhat different.
Oh, okay. And you said this is the far east side of Caelid? I've only ever been to
Yeah.
like the first church. Like if you're crossing from Limgrave and you're going over to Caelid, like that very
Mhm.
first church that's there with the site of grace, it's like as far as I've been into Caelid.
Yeah, there's a there's like a peninsula there on the top right, in the sort of northeast side of Caelid that sort of sticks out. And if you go, there are a couple of bridges there. So if you go into that area where the bridges are, you'll find sort of the area that you need to go to get that Ash of War.
Okay. That I
Yeah.
think I try to do it in the order that it seemed appropriate. So I went to Liurnia after Stormvale. And then I thought about going into Caelid, but when it said that there was a Scarlet Rot, I was like, all right, so this is like this is the whole region that is the swamp, even though there are
Yeah.
also swamps
Yeah.
I'm currently in. But I was like, if that's the case, I'm just gonna build a bunch of. I don't even know if it's probably not poison, but I need to get a couple items. I'm assuming that will help me like stave off some of the rot because I know I don't have. I used to do the thing in. I don't know if you did this, Ian, but in Dark Souls 1, when I would go into Blighttown, the bottom of Blighttown especially, that's where I would use like, all of my like poison buildup items, and I would change my armor just to pick whatever I had that had the most like poison resistance. Because I
Yeah.
used to do that a lot in Dark Souls 1. I would change armors all the time just based on certain resistances for certain types of damage.
Yeah, I almost never did that, but that's only because like I totally should have. The only reason I didn't is because like I was into Souls, like Fashion Souls from the very beginning.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
I was always like I refused to wear anything that I thought looked like shit.
Well, it's funny because like I did eventually stop doing that because I realized it didn't matter that much. But even in this game, I
I
find
mean,
myself like thinking about it, where I'll be like, should I? Well, going into Raya Lucaria, I started putting
yeah.
on like I didn't change my whole armor, but I put on one different chest piece, just because I figured, well, an extra 10 points of resistance to this is probably not a bad thing.
Well, that's what I always thought. I think that's the numbers on that sort of bear this out. Now, I think the original Dark Souls games, the armor actual like damage negation is sort of negligible. Like it didn't really do much.
Right. In
But
those
I do
games,
think the
especially,
armor in
it
this game
feels
is
like it's
way more
nothing.
important, specifically because of what it does to your poise.
Right. Yeah,
So
and that is like you were talking earlier about the poise in this game. I do feel that, especially as someone who started as a dex build, like
yeah,
the difference in like the damage that things do obviously is scaled for open world, but it definitely does feel like poise has changed a little bit,
yeah.
or potentially a
Well,
lot depending on what playstyle you have.
to me, it feels like it's so important just because of the hit stun that you take. Like if you take even a light hit with very low poise, I feel like you are like down for the count for a good 7 or 8 frames. Whereas if you have higher poise, you'll take hit stun still, but you'll like recover a lot faster. So there's
Yes.
lower recovery frames. So it's just, to me, that's like another reason why this game is sort of unfair to certain builds, because poise is so important now, which means that like going with heavy armor, people who use heavy armor are going to be at an advantage. People who, you know, uh, have higher equip loads and shit like that, and they can run with that heavy armor, are going to be better off typically in fights. So, oh, by the way, the cool thing about the Bloodhound step is uh, you can basically run it on kind of any build and get an unbelievable dash, like basically just replace your dodge. If you wanted to like run like a Hovel type of heavy build, you can even run like a fat roll.
Oh, so you can use it with strength, and it's not. I assume because you said like the recovery frames are probably good enough, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So based on
Okay.
what I've seen, it basically has no connection to your equip load or any of that. So it has the exact same performance regardless of what your build is.
Huh.
So like you can be ultra tanky and still have like this incredible like dodge mechanic just by equipping that.
Oh, okay. So
Which is
that's
also
interesting.
potentially kind of game breaking. I don't know. I haven't tried it because I'm not like doing super tanky stuff, but
Well, what's funny is like I was starting to look at some of the what I do like about the inventory. This is another side bit that's related, but when you go through your Ashes of War like page, it seems like they organize them sort of by like what the intended use is. So like the keen ones like Quick Step and I hear for sure. The quick step ones, like they sort them by like whether they're like meant for like strength or dexterity, like Ashes of War for
yeah, what
like
they
wild
scale harder
strikes.
into.
Yeah, which I noticed because the this is gonna be tough. Oh, I almost
Yeah.
fucked that up
Ooh.
real good.
Yeah.
Ah, there it is. I was like,
Yeah.
I only had enough stamina for the one. I was like, nah. When it comes to these, and I've noticed this with decks, I get really, really greedy when they get to low
That
health. Like I stopped for a while at the end of DS3 because I had to. Uh,
you might be helped there. There's a talisman that actually improves your dodge, just your straight up dodge, and makes your dodge have better iframes.
oh right, I
I
think
found that to
you
be
were
pretty
telling me that
helpful
you had
too.
found that at some point, right?
Yeah, so I found that before I found the Bloodhound thing, and I was sort of leaning pretty heavy on that, and that pretty much did the trick, more or less. It if you run a light load and you're running that talisman specifically, it actually makes the dodge pretty viable again. Like it brings the dodge back to where it like really should be.
Okay, so and yeah, you were saying that like fixes the dodge essentially for
Yeah,
how it's
pretty
changed.
much. Yeah. It's sort of like the same effect that the wood grain ring had in Dark Souls 1.
Right, where it improves the iframes in the dodge, but gives you that like quick
Yeah.
animation.
It gives you, yeah, basically just makes it much more effective. The only problem is it comes with a poison pill because it also increases your damage taken.
Oh, that's
So,
right. I
yeah.
forgot that was like I think
Which
that's why I
I,
never wore it. I figured out about it like after I had done my dex build or my dex
yeah,
yep.
I don't really mind that because, like, at that point, I've committed to, like, being a dodge tank. So, like, the point is to not get hit. Like, that's the idea anyway, so.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been
Ooh, that
going
kind
for
of-
with mine is like just that
Oh my
especially like
god.
uh was why it took me so long to figure out the boss from like the stone. Actually, I'm gonna go. I forgot I have a golden seed that I took as my keepsake. I haven't even used it yet.
Oh man, I totally fucked that up. I did not take the golden seed.
I forget. I even knew this like the night it came out. I was like, all right, is this going to be a master key situation where there's like one
Yeah.
good one and then I'm not going to take it? And at that point, I figured, well, you know what? I'm going to make multiple characters anyway. I'm probably not going to pick the good one until later. I think on my decks I picked I picked the medallion, just like the tiny
Yeah.
beings ring, because I figured even if it's like a small amount of health and it's not that great, it'll help me through the first few levels if this game is as hard as everyone's been talking about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I definitely have been like greedier on the dex build, and that I think that talisman would be something that would help. For the most part of the reason why was because I didn't do a lot of dual wielding in the previous games. Like I started with the warrior with the dual scimitars, which is different from what I do with my claws, which is I have my claw on my right hand and then a shield on my left, and then I just do I two-hand the claws, even though I'm dual wielding them,
Yeah.
and that has changed the animation a lot in the sense of like how much the claws truly commit when you are dual wielding them. That's something I'm kind of like relearning. It's almost like I'm playing. I will say, it gives me the feeling of playing like DS1 or something similar again, where I'm trying to learn to like not be greedy. Trying to learn to not be greedy about how much stamina I'm exerting because I'm playing a dex build again, which means that stamina is also my defense. Like I can build up blood with those claws, and that's what I want to do. But if I overexert by like one attack that I shouldn't, that's a boss death every time.
I think that sort of speaks to what I was saying earlier. Like I feel like dex builds are viable in this game, but they really depend on being buffed by the talismans that you find. There are a lot of really powerful talismans that can really support dex, but you like without them, I do feel like I'm a little bit at a disadvantage until I have those. I don't think raw dex on its own is really viable end game unless you are buffing it with like stamina recovery, higher stamina bars with your talismans, things like that. And plus you're buffing your dodge and things like that.
Well, especially I think I've experienced that because even though I am like mostly purely dex, I'm at like level 40 something, close to 50, I think, which is unusual because I don't feel like I'm at level 50. But I've mostly put it into dex. I think I have like 24, 25 dex.
Yeah.
But I have like 20 vigor, 20 endurance because that was the thing I tried to build up first, which seemed like it was pretty smart. But I use the claws, which does have blood buildup, and it has pretty decent blood buildup. I don't remember like what the good numbers are.
I've seen some videos. The blood loss in this game, the blood buildup is super OP, man.
Oh, it is. Jesus. The funniest part is I have Reduvia, the dagger. Yeah. I have like a lot of the other blood building. I have the scythe. I have all the other stuff that if I picked that up first, I totally would have built around it. But I don't even put on like, I do have like the blood grease, but I really don't use it that often. I only have like just claws, and I let their natural blood buildup do like a third of most bosses' health. I do know that blood loss is the crutch for me because the dex damage is good, but the blood loss is what's doing the majority of chunks. Oh fuck. This ain't good.
Well, I think a couple of like katanas later in the game that are just like you can proc it just over and over and over. And there are ashes of war that go with them. It's like there's seppuku as an ash of war that like, and there's also a talisman that's like anytime that there's blood loss in the area in the vicinity, it like cranks up your damage like a ton.
Oh, so like any at all?
Yeah, so you can basically cause slight blood loss on yourself, which automatically procs the blood loss talisman damage buff.
Oh, is it like the Chaos Blade from 1?
Yeah, kind of. And then when not only does it automatically proc that talisman's effect, but then it also is causing bleed effect to the enemy himself. So then you're getting like double bleed effect almost. And it's like it just does these unbelievable chunks of damage.
Huh. Okay, so I'll have to look into that because I haven't been doing like an overcommit of blood build where I use the grease like all the time and I try and like put on as many blood causing things, but that would be I can imagine
lean into it really hard.
Well, right, and I got to imagine that there's going to be I'm struggling on some of the not the run-ups, but like some of like just like the minions in Liurnia, and I feel like I'm going to need something like that eventually. That just if blood is what I'm building into, it doesn't make sense to not get what you're talking about because at that point, that is going to be the majority of my damage. Even if I kill stuff quickly, I would rather do that than be stuck with a build where it's like, yeah, you have a lot of endurance and you have a lot of dex, but your damage just isn't that good because you're mostly fighting like armored targets.
Yeah, and then it just comes down to like, do you like using like katana weapons?
Right.
Because some people don't. Like, if that's not like your thing, then maybe that's not where you want to go. But I don't know if seppuku can be used on other weapons other than katanas, though. I don't think it can.
Oh, as like a so you can't like modify it and put it on.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think you. I think
I
it
wonder if
can
it's
only
even
be
something you could
used.
pick up as like an Ash of like a solo Ash of War that's not just like something on a weapon.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Uh, um, yeah, one of the builds I saw, there was a video on Twitter of someone who was dual wielding katanas, and one of them was the blood one that I've heard a lot about. And they had the quick step that you were talking about, the one that you like teleport with.
Yeah, the
And
Bloodhound step.
man, that looked anime as hell. That looked like some Samurai Jack shit, but it also looked like it was really effective even for, PvE, just fighting bosses. I would absolutely switch to dual wielding katanas later on if that was how good it was.
You can
Although,
just put so much damage on an enemy in such a short amount of time with dual wielding in this game. Like, it's just like you can get 5 hits in at the same amount of time that you can get in like a regular one-handed
oh yeah,
sword
and
strike.
I started a character on DS3 a few months ago that was also dual wielding scimitars, and I did
Yeah.
notice the difference where when I started on my main character, um, just like the amount of attacks I could do, I didn't do a lot of poise damage because it was scimitars, but I was able to get in a lot of damage because of the power stancing that they added back from, I think, from 2 or I guess from 3.
Mhm.
I was almost always mashing like left bumper or like left button instead of right, because when you're dual wielding, it almost makes no sense to use the right attack unless you're just trying to save on stamina. But I would do that against. I think I beat Margit with the dual scimitars, and I hadn't. I think I maybe upgraded both of them to +1, so I had just enough of like a damage increase that it made a huge difference. But beyond
Man,
that, it was like
I remember
nothing.
going in the CNT up against Margit, and I had the dual scimitars too because I used the warrior class at that point.
Yeah, that's what I
And
did.
boy, that was hard.
Yeah,
This way,
Going in with a double suit with the
May I
dual
have a
scimitars was like I felt like I was going in on hard mode.
A pleasure to me.
yeah,
So
and it definitely was. Like I had to use summoning spirits for that fight simply
Yeah.
because even when I was like dodging really well and I was like reading the fight well, it just
I
took
was
so
entrusted my
goddamn
talents
long
for
because of
them.
how little damage I did. And he's not an armored. I don't think
To
he's
the
armored
elf,
anyway.
I
Like
summoned them with it, the spirit
he was
No,
effective to
not
blood.
really.
but now it
Bleeding.
is thine.
Yeah. I did the same thing, and I thought I knew that was kind of the price that I paid when you play a Dex class early, even in the old games. You're not doing as much damage.
Forgive my
It's kind of like
sins
using the
tarnished,
spear
and
over
I
like
be
using a
shaken at
sword.
meat.
Where like the
But all
spear
the
is like
same,
really good and it doesn't take as much
blue
stamina and
are
the
the
animation's
lands
faster, but it
between.
does less damage.
How long will it
It's
be
kind of
till
like
one
it was one of those things
before the
where
tarnished tire of a
when I played
blade slipped through my
DS1 with a Dex
fingers?
build, I used the Iaito, so another katana weapon, and that
Yeah.
eventually worked because I did have enough like additive from the strength, like a little bit of strength scaling, that like every strike you do with a katana feels like it does more damage. Whereas with dual scimitars, they're both so weak that even when you're power stancing, you're spending way longer in fights because you only do a little bit of damage and you have to dash in and out. Whereas with
Yeah.
strength, like I killed Gaping Dragon in like 6 hits with a club because I just sat there and smashed his toes with heavy armor on. That's kind of
Yeah.
the trade off, and I noticed that with Margit especially because I was like, God, this fight is so fucking long.
Yeah, Margit is a slog. I don't know that. I think Margit, based on I'm pretty far away through the game now. I'm sort of end game now. I still think Margit is one of the harder bosses in the game.
Oh, absolutely. I think especially like just the timing of when this game has come out and for how many people were coming up against Margit to begin with, it
Mhm.
it seems like it was Margit is like by all intents and purposes and like conceptually not a unique gimmick for a boss. Like Margit is just a Dark Souls boss. He happens to be bigger than a humanoid, and he has a lot of different attacks, and you can switch him up.
Yeah.
But he's not really like he's not a Moonlight Butterfly. He's not a Ceaseless Discharge or something. He's just a dude, but he can change up the timing of his attack so differently that like even veterans of Dark Souls were like, okay, this is one of those walls, but it's a wall for everybody. It wasn't just like, oh, I played Dark Souls, I can do this. It's like, no, this is a
Yeah.
standard, like the most like boss, like standard regular boss, but just the way he can like the way his AI works with deciding what to do next and for how long.
He
is
also
just
like
so complex.
he's one of those bosses that like exploits where you are in the game at that point. Like the game knows that you're not super buff at that point. Obviously,
Right.
you haven't done a lot of like leveling. So like it knows that you're not going to have the Ashes of War that are going to allow you to do Shadow Step. It's not going to you're not going to have those tools.
Right, you don't have the options.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I've noticed now that on my main character with the claws that I have more damage, and like I've upgraded them to like +6. I'm pretty sure they're like 1 or 2 more levels than they should be. Um, there's been a few, especially some of these side bosses, where I would just summon dogs and then have them like tank for me, and I would just shred the shit out of these guys in like less than a minute. And I
Yeah.
could tell most of that was probably from my dex scaling mixed with the weapon upgrades. But I noticed that, and it made me think back to like old bosses. Like, have I mostly gone through Dark Souls games because I just happen to be upgraded high enough that I just like shred most bosses, or I do more damage per hit than they expect at that level? Because when I
Yeah.
fought Margit, I was like, there's not really a whole lot I can do. There's no, like, there might be a damage type or two, but there's no real strategy here. It's pretty much just, I just have to be better about my timing.
Yeah, and do you use summons a lot? Have you
Um,
found yourself leaning on those?
so for the spirits, I pretty much use them whenever I can, just because they, the way I'm treating this game is like, I haven't done like a lot of like co-op summons. I've only done like the spirits. But I'm kind of treating it as like I'm trying to play Elden Ring as much as what's intended as possible. So I'll do summons. I'll try to use like every tool that they've added with this game. So I use spirits almost whenever I can.
Yeah.
And even then, it's not 100% because when I'm utilizing stealth a lot for my shit. So when I'm like going up and like fighting these Godric Knight camps like along the roads, I mostly just try to play Metal Gear Solid until I get caught, and then I will like summon spirits and then
Oh,
just have
wow.
an all-out brawl.
Yeah, I was using spirits a lot actually, which I didn't think that I would, but
I almost didn't when people were debating if that counted as summons, but I like them in the sense that they're not. One, it's great for bosses where I don't have to worry about if someone's going to disconnect or not.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
But I've been using them a lot only because I think it does play to my build technically. I am like an assassin type. If I'm trying to like narrativize the way my character plays, I feel like they absolutely would use the spirits, because if their whole thing is about like being able to do a lot of damage and really quickly, then I just like I don't even summon like big boys. I just summon like wolves or the Godric Knights, or even the skeleton like militiamen, because I
Yeah.
really just use them as like targets. I just want like
Yeah.
distractions, like a fun house mirror.
Yeah, they draw aggro. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I was using them for before too. I found myself though not using them really at all anymore, like late game. And the reason is because like now that I'm using more faith magic and I'm using the Bloodhound step basically as my main dodge, like FP is so precious.
Oh
Like,
God, yeah.
using
I've
summon.
just now noticed that because that was weird. I just started doing more with Ashes of War. Like for a little while, I was using Impaling Strike with the claws just to get through shields. Although then I started to switch to the Storm Stomp just because I was trying to. If I'm using claws, I'm just trying to get people to open up
Yeah.
so that I can get to them. And then I've just now noticed that because I started picking up some of the later Ashes where my like FP total is like 74, and I started picking up the ones that are like 100. And I was like, man, I'd love to use this like cool, like uniquely named knight, except I don't have the magic for it, and I'm not really building into magic.
Yeah.
Shit. I forgot.
I mean,
second
that's the
one.
thing. Like, you might end up doing that though, because again, like the way that I'm building mainly to buff my sword. Like whatever I am specking into, it's because I decided the weapon that I want to use, right? So I'm going to
Right.
spec into whatever buffs that sword the most. And it turned out, weirdly, that my sword is benefiting the most from faith of all things.
And you said
So then
the scaling for faith on that weapon is not like higher than a D or a C,
No,
right?
yeah, it's just a C, and I've got like a level 21 weapon now. And I
That is
think the
that
highest
is
it goes
so
25.
weird to me that is.
Yeah, exactly. And I've done multiple tests. Like I'd respect my character sheet many times to like see if it will change it. But the most I can get out of the sword right now is a faith build, and that's just for the melee damage of the sword. I mean, it's doing faith damage. It's doing like magic damage, but
Right.
damage is damage. So because I had to spec into faith to get the most power out of my sword, I figure, well, I got this huge faith stat now. I might as well
Right.
get some use out of it with some magic. And now I'm sort of doing like this Witcher kind of a build where like I'm mostly melee, but I've got these cool like complementary spells in my left hand. That sort of every now and then will like I've got some get off me moves or some like crowd control moves.
Right,
That are
but you've
really
got the
helpful.
utility.
Yeah, so like I never would have expected that I would have started specking into Faith, but like I totally respect the Faith just because it helps my melee build. So you never know. I mean, maybe later on in the game when you get a weapon that like you're really committed to, you might find that like specking into something else might actually be more beneficial to your playstyle.
I debated that a little bit because when I was pretty much planning on going just like mostly like pure decks after my Iaito run in 1. And then I picked up I forget what it was. I think it was the Earthsteel dagger, which is like it's a dagger that has like a faith scaling element to it and also a requirement. And it made me think like I've always like done the thing in like 1 and 3 where you pick up weapons that are like the magic swords or like magic axes and stuff. And I'm like, man, it'd be cool if I could wield this, but I can't because I'm not building magic. And when I'm building magic, I'm thinking about being like a ranged like a caster. I'm not really thinking about being like a spell knight as much.
Yeah.
Unless,
well, that's sort of what I was.
yeah,
that's
for
what
me,
I'm
I feel like
finding,
spell knight is something that you really have to know like ahead of time. Like you have to have probably played the game before, and
Yeah.
B, you have to spec your stats in such a way where it's like, all right, am I viable enough where I can do all the leveling and all the shit that I need to in order to eventually wield a weapon that I know that I don't get for like the first like 5 hours or so? Because whenever I pick up these weapons, I'm like, man, that's a really specifically like high stat. It'll be like 16 strength and like 30 faith or vice versa. And I'm like, I cannot see myself naturally building a character to have those stats at the particular time that I pick up that weapon. Like
Yeah.
which I know is just part of the scaling of Dark Souls games, because I feel like those requirements are that high in some cases because they want people to like see it and go, oh man, that's really cool. Maybe I'll start doing this instead just to pick up this weapon. But I've never really gotten to wield like magic melee weapons for like spell knights because most of the time the requirements are so particular, and I'm usually only building magic or only building melee, which is I know is very weird for most Dark Souls players.
Well, how are you feeling about the weapons? Because like I am personally a little bit disappointed in the specific class of weapon that I want to use. Because like back in Dark Souls, all of the Dark Souls, in fact, there were weapons in that class that were like basically on par with even like the best legendary weapons. Like there were straight swords that were end game worthy, that were like they can get S scaling. Basically, is kind of what I'm talking about. Like
Right.
Based on what I'm seeing, the weapons in the class that I want to use, the only ones that ever reach any kind of S scaling are the magic ones or the like legendary ones that don't take other Ashes of War. So like if I wanted to get an S scaling weapon, I would have to get rid of my Bloodhound step, which I'm never ever going to do.
No, I would not either. Once I find that, that's another interesting thing that this is something that I realized playing DS1 when I was doing my very first run. That's when I was using I used a club, like not a great club or a large club, just the club. And I was looking for other strength scaling weapons because I was doing like it was a joke character at first where I was just going to put only points into strength. So I was looking for other strength scaling weapons, and I noticed that in the Souls games a lot, there's not really a lot of weapons that are meant to scale up to like A and S, like as common as, you know, like the D and C ones are with straight swords. For that particular reason, because they want it to be like, okay, if you're using a weapon that scales this hard with what is probably your primary stat, we don't want it to be so prevalent where it doesn't matter like how much you have into strength. If it scales like S and you have like 12 strength, that's a pretty big buff to your damage.
Yeah.
Likely for what you're
building.
It's
funny, like I had to, in order to really utilize my faith, I got a sacred seal, right? My left hand armament.
Right.
So that I can cast incantations. My sacred seal is S tier. It's already scaling S into faith.
Oh, really?
Whereas my sword is still like chugging along at C scale.
Huh.
Like, it's so bizarre. It's like, why can't I get like a sword in this class that can get? I would settle for A scaling basically. But like, I'm not even getting that. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, um that's something I've been trying to play around with more in this game, especially was like the whole like scaling thing, and it's also something that it goes back to the Ashes of War thing too, right? Where it's like, oh damn, tune me up.
How
It
long is
goes
this
back
boss battle?
to the Ashes of War thing where I would try to pick like the keen version of a lot of ashes for the sake of the fact that I'm mostly going into dex. Like I have like a
Yeah,
1 to 4 ratio for strength to dex or
yeah,
however that works out. And like the keen was not really improving it by a whole lot. And I was trying to figure out if that is the scaling per weapon. I know like sometimes you ever seen that thing where like you're looking at like a I think it's actually when you're looking at Ashes of War, it'll show like the if you do like the side by side comparison of like the before after,
hmm
say it like it has D scaling already, and then on the upgrade side, it'll still have a D, but it's blue. So it's
yeah.
like it's still D class, but it's saying that within that D
There's
class,
something in there. Yeah, it's
yeah.
still getting benefit.
I'm
Yeah,
wondering how much scaling has changed because for claws being like I think they're maybe like D or C or maybe it's B with Dex. I think I get them up to B with a keen Ash of War.
yeah.
But I'm wondering how much scaling might have changed because I feel like claws aren't meant to do a whole lot of damage. It's like spears. Spears have a very low base damage, but when you add the keen scaling, it doesn't go up by much because they're thinking about like how many like hits. It's kind of like a sniper rifle versus a machine gun, right? If a machine gun
Right.
hits a lot more, the damage is going to be lower. A sniper rifle will have really high damage number because it only shoots like one every so many seconds or minutes.
Yeah, I think that's my problem with the balance because, like, I've like take straight swords for example, which are the ones that I like to use. I feel like maybe the cap basically for anything that it's going to scale into is going to be B. So that's all I've been able to see so far on this. Like, as
Right.
high as it's going to get for strength or dex is B.
That is high
Um,
I've even seen.
yeah, which is a little bit frustrating because, to your point, I don't feel like long swords are fast enough to warrant B being the highest scaling that it can reach. So that's the
Right.
first thing. But I also think that um, even in the previous games, there were straight swords that could be scaled into S, like the Lothric Knight straight sword from Dark Souls 3. That can scale into X to S if you put a sharp gem in there.
Right. And yeah, the sharp and the heavy gems, especially in the third game, is what made it be like, okay, if you're really going into like scaling for this stat, this is going to give you the scaling letter to
Right,
use.
right. So it opens up the game a little bit. So like it makes it more viable to do kind of the build that you want. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
feel like, again, weirdly in this game, at least up until now, I felt like it's actually a little more restrictive for different play styles than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I've especially
Because of
noticed
that.
that. I mean, like even DS1 and 3 had their sort of like there's a lot of stuff for strength or faith here, and I know that Elden Ring was not going to be um, different from that per se. Um, but I have noticed that it does seem like I've been making Dex work because I have that blood like additional
Right.
like stat going on, but I'm also thinking like how lucky is it that I have that because if I went like if I only did like scimitars which don't do inherent bleed, I don't think like how much harder would that be if I didn't have that little additional like status ailment kind of thing. And
Right.
that's what makes me think that like I've been lucky with Dex because like you said, Dex is doable, but you need very specific stuff. It's very gear reliant kind of thing.
Yeah, like I gave up on Dex like pretty early on. I
I
was
might
like,
get to that point. I love it right now, but I also know that I've been playing a very specific type of like when I'm free roaming, it's easy because I can stealth up to anything, and I've got the incantation for assassins approach, which is awesome. I forgot that existed.
yeah,
Um, I have that, and I think that that works because I'm doing stealth and I'm doing blood and I'm doing a very specific kind of dex. But if I were to just go and say, all right, I'm going to do a quality build that mostly leans into dex more than strength, that's what I did in DS3. It was
mhm,
really hard because, like you said, uh, even though it's not Elden Ring, it's DS3, but my dex damage scaling was like good. It helped improve it, but I didn't get the benefits of all the stuff that dex like super hard specializes in, right? Like blood or like any of the assassin stuff or like playing like a thief. Like it very much in those games, like it wants to reward stealth when you lean really hard into it. You can't just be like a fast like swashbuckler. You got to be like a
yeah.
thief or an assassin. Um, and in this game, that I've been making that work because I am playing more into that. Whereas when I played Dex before, it was always like mixed with strength of some kind. There was no way to do like Dex, but I'm not going to like strike hard and fast or often or only do stealth kind of thing. Like you couldn't really like dance around that often with Dex because your damage wasn't high enough. So even
That's
if
the
you
thing
were
I'm
approaching stuff
wondering.
at face value, you really couldn't. You wouldn't survive long enough usually.
I'm wondering now if that is different late game. Like if you have something like a Bloodhound Step, if that would really make like Dex builds come alive. Like it would really wake those up. Maybe I don't really know. I
Yeah,
just know that like for me, early game, man, Dex was hard to get into, and I haven't found any weapons that have scaled better into Dex than they scale into something like a Strength or a Faith or something else.
yeah. I that's kind of what I'm realizing now. Like as I've gotten into Liurnia and stuff has gotten harder, is I know that I can make my build like continue to work, so long as I have like certain items, and I'm totally like willing to change that up if I have to, especially if I find the respec. Um, because like I started fight stuff where it wasn't just a matter of, oh, okay, I'm just being too greedy or I'm being too clumsy. It was like, no, you are. I'm doing everything 100%, well, as correct as it can be, but there's only so much stuff that you can do, um, before your damage output is just not enough. And part of that is
Yeah.
because like, yeah, the enemies are going to get tougher. They're going to have more health. And with Dex, especially, you'd think like, all right, well, I should be able to at least like find a way around this, right? And uh, for some of the stuff in Liurnia, there's been certain fights, even not even against bosses, where I'm just like, I don't know if Dex is something I can do here. I think I might have to change my build up just for this one area.
Yeah. Which is messed up. Like I've never seen that before. Like I've seen specific boss fights that are like you should probably use this weapon, right? But
Right.
like certain areas that are situations that are just like, yeah, this is better for these guys. It's like except for like magic. Magic is always like the great sort of outlier. Like magic is always better for everything. But
Yeah. I think what it really comes down to is a lot of what's going on, even with this game, is already stuff that we've already seen in other Souls games, right? Which is, magic is almost always viable no matter where you are, and you can pretty
yeah.
much just sit back and launch like the one like intro nuke, which is like fine. I have no problem with it being that way, but really, it's like I already knew all this stuff about the Souls games, but it's just interesting that it's still here because so much else has changed about it, and yet we still treat magic the same way. Dex still has its certain issues with how it's gear reliant. Strength is very similar. Like always specking into like a secondary stat or a magic stat is always a thing. Like all that
Yeah.
stuff is still here. Like that hasn't changed at all. But I'm still finding myself running into it and being like, why is this still a thing? Like why is that still necessary? I don't know if
Yeah, I'm
that's
very
just
curious to see how the weapons change once they get fully because you can't actually scale up your weapons until like all the way up until you've reached sort of end game. So I'm interested to see what happens when I finally like completely cap out my sword.
right.
Um, See if that makes any difference at all. I don't know. It would be interesting to see. Because I mean, like I said, the scaling. I think the weapon that I want to use it wants to be a quality weapon because it can scale into B on both strength and dex at the same time. But even when I'm doing that and I spec out into that specifically, I'm still like, it's still getting its ass kicked by a faith build.
Is the
Like,
weapon that you're using now, is it like a boss weapon or like a specific like named
no,
weapon?
no, yeah, because again, I can't really use any of the boss weapons because I want to use the Bloodhound step, so I have to use sort of a more like
Oh, right, because of the FP cost.
normal weapon. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm using the Lord Sworn straight sword. This one you can get like super early in the game. You can get it from
Oh,
like
okay,
any
yeah. I've seen that.
Um, and it's one of the few straight swords that isn't special. There are actually a lot of like really special straight swords in this game that are pretty cool. But again, you can't put your own Ashes of War on them. You only have the one choice. You can only use what's already in them.
Oh, okay.
So, and I don't want to do that. I want to use the Bloodhound one. So I want to use the sword, which is fine. But again, like the best I can get out of it is the faith, which is so bizarre. Like I just don't understand. Maybe I just really need to pump more skill points into dex and strength to really push it along. But I guess the point is the same level that I'm at right now. If I take what I would put into dex and strength and just put that into faith, it just kicks a quality build's ass.
Yeah.
Like, there's
It-
no point in even trying a quality build. Just obviously, I should use faith.
right.
It's
Well,
really
and that's part of what still goes back to the old Souls games that is still present now, is that it just adding any little bit of magic seems to do so much. Part of me wonders like if it's just a matter of the way that magic damage is treated in terms of like resistances. Like if you're a straight up sorcerer, like you can tell like if you're using like slashing weapons on like the stone guys in caves, you're clearly not going to do as much, and that makes sense. I think magic just might have this overall benefit because magic seems to pervade or like get past so many of those like the problems that physical weapons have with like the difference between pierce and strike and slash. I think
Yeah.
magic is just like so universally like, yeah, most things are not weak to it, but most things don't have resistance to it. Especially
Yeah,
like
as
when it's just like the
usual.
regular dudes.
As usual, magic is unfair.
Right, not even in its just casting, but in the way that magic damage is treated too. That I think is the other thing that makes magic so overpowered, is that just like regular arcane like blue magic as a damage type has only so few monsters or creatures in the game that have a resistance above like 100% or the normal amount. That
Yeah.
magic is almost good in every case, even for melee weapons. That's why, like you're saying with your weapon, that little bit of faith does so much, and I think it's because it does. Does it do more than just the physical type of damage?
Yeah, so it has basically it's half and half. It gets half physical damage and half faith damage.
Okay, so that's what I'm thinking, is that like that faith damage is that magic, and that's why that scaling is so good. Is not only is it increasing like the number itself, but it's also making it also has the damage type of magic, which means it gets past so many other things resistances.
Yeah,
Um,
weird.
yeah,
It's weird. I need to do way more experimenting before I can like even get a sense for what the fuck is going on there.
yeah. But I would agree. I think you're right in that generally those, even if you're doing like a knight with like a little bit of magic, those magic weapons end up being usually better in terms of damage scaling, no matter like what your like point to point allocation is, because that magic damage that you get is just it's so universally good against almost everything.
Damn, you're gonna take on this boy super early.
Well, I wanted, so when this is the reverse of how I usually play this, Ian. I usually, oh hey,
Look at this guy. Get the
oh he
fuck
might get me. That's just enough. Usually when I first played this, I didn't get to this side of Grace until like day 2 or 3, I think.
Oh, okay.
I spent most of my time just wandering around Limgrave, just trying to find like a little bit of like extra like bonus stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, I just wanted to get to that point because I'm trying to think of like, I don't have my regular map up, so I'm trying to remember like, okay, where is the good shit that I should probably try to get to first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. My gripe with that whole like the trying to do like a spell knight thing is like I love coming across those weapons because they're really interesting, but I hate how much you have to build into being basically a mage before you can even wield them, because
Yeah.
it's not even just a matter of having the magic stat requirement to do it. Usually those magic like swords and magic axes and stuff that are meant to be like half melee build, half magic, have some sort of like magic attack that uses up your like FP. So you don't just need the magic stat, you need to have like you said, the reason why you can't use the boss weapons is because you're trying to save your FP for that ability. And so
Yeah.
you're stuck with a situation where it's like, I'd love to use it. I have the stats. I qualify for it, but I don't have enough magic to use this thing more than twice. And at that point, the whole like special thing of this weapon is almost moot point because I can't use it as often as I should be able
Yeah.
to. And like which I also understand the whole point investment. I only just recently started a paladin build, like a faith strength build on Dark Souls Remastered on my Switch for when I'm at work, and even then, like now that I'm trying to do a build where I'm trying to build into it like on purpose specifically, it makes sense. But if I was playing this naturally for the first time and I was like, oh, I want to do magic and a little bit of sword stuff, like the first time someone plays Skyrim and they realize they can do that, it's almost like unless you set yourself up for that specific build, you're not going to be able to use half of those weapons.
Yeah.
Like there are some like arcane dex weapons in this game. That's like it's really cool, but there's also some dex faith ones, and I'm not going to be able to see those unless I build for that specific stat. And when the first time you play this game, you see arcane and faith, I'm just like, well, those stats all sound magical, so I'm sure they're really cool. I'm just gonna pick one and then just go with it.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of screwed in terms of being able to switch it around until this game where you can respec.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's different than what I'm used to, and there's some things going on under the hood that I just don't understand, I guess.
Yeah.
Right now. And I guess the longer people play this game, maybe like people will start like doing some testing and figuring that stuff out. But like for now, it's like I'm actually pretty happy with my build. I just ended up in a place that I just never would have expected. Like being faith build of all things, fucking weird.
Yeah, it is definitely like it's a strange one because I remember trying to build, it might have been like strength int or like dex int or something, and I don't remember which game it would have been, but there was a lot more, geez, kind of hard hits. There's a lot more faith scaling melee weapons, which makes sense because most like paladins are going to be like strength faith or use faith in some manner. And I was trying to build for one magic stat, and I realized I was like, well, I had no way of knowing this until now, but there's no real way to know ahead of time that there's not going to be that many weapons for the two that scale with the two stats I'm really trying to build.
Yeah.
Which again, it's like part of that, like I could take it or leave it. It's also part of the discovery, I guess. But it is also, it's nicer for someone to be able to really like learn what the stats do going forward on the first playthrough, rather than it having to be a thing where it's like you just kind of have to be indoctrinated in the club and then know, oh, okay, there's like 40 strength faith weapons and one like dex faith weapon, so I should just always go strength faith if I'm gonna do faith at all.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I think it was really frustrating for me in the beginning. Like I said, I think that I feel like even more important than some of that stuff is the talismans and the special abilities that you can get, stuff that buffs things passively, that kind of stuff. I find that has really opened the game up for me specifically. When you get all of your talisman slots, it really kind of makes you way more powerful in the game. So I think overall, I'm liking the game more than I did when I first started playing, which makes me like it makes me look forward to like a new game plus.
Oh yeah,
then maybe
absolutely.
I can like go into some of these previous fights that I had done that I didn't quite enjoy as much with all of these new tools that I like so much, and that will probably be a lot more fun, I hope. Because the abilities that you get, like, they're not just like in a lot of other games, they're just like passive stat buffs or like
it's always something that you don't really get involved with.
Right, but some of these buffs that I'm getting with these talismans are like changing mechanics. Like the Bloodhound stuff just completely gives you a brand new mechanic that is equivalent to me of being able to break people's poise. Like it's that important. It's that game changing. So it gives someone who wants to move quickly a tool back in their toolbox that a heavy build wouldn't have. The only difference is that the heavy build can have it because they can just add the Bloodhound Ash of War to their weapon, and they can also have it. So
right, and so they basically just get that anyway.
Yeah, but regardless, it makes it more fun for me. So I appreciate that. I think it's overall making the game a lot more fun. So I'm happy about that. Because I was a little bummed that initially it was kind of like not as much fun, but yeah, I'm kind of digging it a bit more. So that's pretty cool.
Right. I'm gonna die. Oh no, maybe it won't. I'm so glad. One other thing is I'm so glad that fall damage has changed a bit. I get that fall damage should be a thing, I think, but man, the amount of fall damage that DS1 had was just like you could fall like what would be like maybe an ankle sprain and then just die.
Well, it also didn't have like linear progression either. It was like you went from being super fine, no damage at all, to just dead.
Yeah.
Like if you go like 1 foot farther, you're dead.
Right, and I think I don't know if Dex I know in some of the games, Dex does reduce your fall damage, but I don't know if DS1 did it yet. I think it was just like no matter what stat you had raised, all fall
Mm.
damage was like universally the same, maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's a talisman in this game that completely negates fall damage.
oh, really? That, see, now
Yeah,
that I would be.
which actually, if you think about, is kind of busted
Well,
because
right, because
for
there's.
exploration purposes,
Well,
like
because there's a certain distance that if you fall, you just automatically die, right? Does it stop
correct,
those
yeah.
from happening?
And I believe it works even when you're on your horse. I think, but even if it doesn't, because I haven't
Huh.
tested that, but like, it's kind of busted for exploration because you can just like you can fall really far.
Right, and that's what I was gonna say.
You
There's
don't even
there's
know
been
how to get
times in
into it.
Stormvale where like I needed that very, very badly.
Yeah, for sure.
And that, yeah, that's another thing that I think is also really interesting with this being open world is that like even in DS1, everything was really connected. Like you can see um, parts of Bed of Chaos from Tomb of the Giants and stuff. Like everything's always been really interconnected. But an item like that being in the game means that you absolutely can. I mean, speedrun strats are going to rely on that probably heavily
Oh,
because
it
you
must.
could.
Yeah, I wonder. It must be really tough to like balance that because they've got to know that like that's got to be kind of game breaking. Like you can do serious sequence breaking with that stuff, right?
Right. Oh my God. Yeah.
Maybe there are areas that are like it'll just kill you because there's no dropping down into it at all.
Yeah.
So maybe the talisman won't work for that type of thing. But it just seems like, man, if that really negates all fall damage no matter where you go, that seems kind of busted.
Yeah. That especially would be. I mean, I'm thinking about all the times in the past few hours where I've been like, man, if I could just like fall and not have to worry about it, that would be fine. Well, especially on some of those early stone sword key areas too. Xanomore says, "Be wary of that talisman. Its words may lie to you." I think they're referring to the fall damage talisman.
Fall damage one, cattail one.
Is there some
Yeah,
sort of like
I
secret
haven't
to it?
tested it to like the super extremes. I don't know, but I've negate some damage.
I was gonna say, I mean, regardless, that's still pretty damn important. Uh, yeah, there was a few times in God, so something I did the other day was I was going through Stormvale Castle, and I was trying to get to the Divine Tower because I realized that's probably where it was. Was that extra bit in Stormvale that's like really easy to miss? I think, at least it was for me because like any of the areas where there were like 17 dudes lined up for war, I was like, oh, this must just be like some extra bit that I skipped because I chose like the battlements instead.
Is that right? Is that like right up the gut behind the initial gate of Stormvale?
Yeah, so I never opened the gate. Like when I beat Margit and Godric, I
Yeah.
did all of like the core stuff in Stormvale, and I never opened that front gate. I didn't even know it was an option.
Yeah.
I forgot that when you look through it, there's items on the other side. But like that's one of those things that I do in the old games too, which is like it's
There's a
really
whole place
easy to
to
be
go
like,
over there.
I'll come back to it
section.
later.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you haven't gone over there, you should go back over there because there's a whole like area to explore that you want to go over there too. The only problem is it's guarded by like a fucking lion beast. So
right. Yeah, and I eventually did, and that's what I was talking about was when I was trying to get to that area, I was trying to figure out like, okay, I can see like logically how this works. Like I'm not even looking at the map. I'm trying to look at like where I've been before here.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out, I was like, okay, how do I get there? Like how do I like what hallway did I miss that I need to go down? And so what I did is I started by going up by like the Godric side of Grace, and I would like try to like walk my way down like what essentially is like the main part of that of the castle, which like has like all the dudes on the ballistas, and it has like the giant toward the back, and I would try to like fight my way down there as much as I could, and then eventually I started going to it's the site of Grace right before the birds with the swords on them. I started to like I noticed that the edges of some of the like the taller towers have like these it has like sort of like an edge to it that you can stand on. So then I started trying to shortcut from there, basically like do a like thing like if I was like walking like on the buildings in Bloodborne, I would just like skip around a bunch of them and then just try and avoid as much of those dudes as I could. And then eventually I realized like, oh, there's actually supposed to be an even shorter way to get to that tower. You just have to run through some stuff on your horse. So I spent like an hour like doing this like really like unique Mission Impossible catwalk just to get there. only to realize like, oh, if you just barged in with your horse, it wouldn't even be a problem.
Horse solves so many problems in this game.
You're right. And so I'll go back to this side of Grace here. This gate front one, right after you get, or usually where you get the horse. So here's the way that I approached this when I came to this area. That's not too many souls. So when I first got here, I could easily tell. I think I bought the spyglass ahead of time. So I walk up here and I notice, all right, we got 4 dudes with their crossbows, and then we got this dude who eventually jumps down. So my first thought wasn't to take the horse through. My first thought was, okay, he jumps down, and now I've got 5 things on me, and this motherfucker is probably going to kill me first. So what I ended up doing instead was I realized, okay, the giant is not like allied with these guys. So what if I just do this? And so I would sit here and try to not take damage. And I would just wait until he hits him. And so I was like, all right, cool. Jump over to the other side, basically do the same thing, try not to die, and just let him take him out. And then me and him just do a little one-on-one. And then I watched someone stream it like an hour after I did it, and they were just like, all right, so I'm going to go through here again. And they just get on the horse and they just skip all of it. And I was like, it's funny how, like, it's not, it seems like a cheese or it seems like some sort of, like, easy strategy. But I never would have thought about that because I'm so used to making myself do, like, the Nate thing where I got to fight everything on the way up.
Oh, so I was thinking that too. I was thinking about that the other day. I was thinking, because I was doing the same thing. I always play that way. We've discussed this before on Torture Tuesdays. Like, the standard rule that most of us play by is, like, we beat every enemy at least once, right? And then after we do that, we can run past them. I find in this game that you can't really do that because, A, the world is just so fucking big that if you were to kill every enemy that you see, if you were to follow that rule, you would never get anywhere.
There are times where you just have to run. It's interesting too because there are this isn't really much of a. I wouldn't say this is much of a spoiler because it is a side thing. There are certain like treasure chests you can open up in this game that will take you to somewhere that is not where the treasure chest is.
Yeah.
And in one of these particular ones that you can get really early on, the where you get sent to is basically like this underground mine that is full of it's in a whole other region. It's in one of the regions that is not like Limgrave, and it's tough as hell because those enemies are scaled up for that region.
Correct.
And they have got like different types of magic, different types of attacks. Like you've never seen the mines before at this point usually, and like the only real strategy to get out of that is just to fucking run. Yes, I tried to fight him, and I could kill 1 or 2, but my damage and my stats and my weapons were just so low, it was almost impossible. It was like,
because it doesn't let you teleport until you've rested at a site of grace. Like, it requires you to rest at a site of grace before you can go back and reattain your ability to warp.
Yeah.
Which is super dirty.
Like, and that was why. It wasn't just like, oh, I can just come back to it. It was like, no, I have to do this.
Yeah,
I can't get out of it. And that's what really made me realize they're really reinforcing that. And it's still weird to come to on it. That's where I was going to try and go a little bit east. When you come like from the older Dark Souls games to this, where it's implied, but it doesn't really explain it super well. To where like hey, you can just run by stuff. So people will end up like beating their head against a wall for hours on end because they don't know that's like a thing. In this game, it still does it, but especially now that it's open world, that's more important than ever. But they're still treating it the way that they used to. Like, they're still saying, like, oh, yeah, like, we're not ever really going to, like, even hint at the idea that, like, running is an option. We're just going to say, oh, yeah, no, you can totally run past it. Like, it's not something that we have to talk about.
Yeah, there are enemies that I just have never killed. I've run past them millions of times. I just never kill them because it's like, man, I don't got time for this. I got to go. I'm on a mission, man. I got places to be, things to do.
And I think that's fine. It's not something that like needs to change the way that Dark Souls works. But yeah, it was just interesting because when I came to that last point with the giant and the 4 dudes, it was like, oh, I could have just run through this on my horse. And now that we have the mount, that's like more of an option. And it also makes running through stuff and like doing the run-ups on certain bosses way easier. Or even just like for certain like non-legacy dungeons, because when you have the horse, it's like, well, I can try and play this stealthy, or I can risk getting hit and now I'm doing it on a horse, which means like the level of what that is like way higher because now
Yeah.
there's so much in this game I've been able to skip through because I have the horse, which is awesome. Even though sometimes it makes me feel like, oh, I'm cheating because I'm using the horse, which is it shouldn't be because it's literally why they put it in the game. Um,
Yeah, the horse at some points does feel like kind of a cheese, but like as we
right.
said about the tree sentinel, like the game, one of the first lessons the game tells you is use your horse. Like horse matters. That it's there for a reason. Use it. Like it's a tool. I think if it feels like cheese, it's probably because it's so different to what we're used to from Souls games.
Right. I think that's like my overall like tagline with this game has just been like trying to, based on my past Souls knowledge, figure out what of the stuff that I'm doing feels like cheese and what of it is that's just the way that Souls works. Even though it might feel uncomfortable to do it, that's how the game is. Because that's how I felt when I first played the first Dark Souls. It was like I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing it like this because I'm used to playing very conservatively with like JRPGs and stuff. Um, Whereas with this now, it's just like, oh, okay, this it doesn't, even though it feels weird at first, like I don't mind running through stuff on the horse now because it's part of the open world aspect of this game. And a lot of Souls, like when they try out different things, is just like slapping something onto the formula and seeing if it works. Um, and I like it so far. Like it's legitimately nice to play on a second character and not have to worry about how am I going to get through this one hallway in the open world because I'm playing magic now with no real toughness. Now I can just use the horse and just run through everything. Like like you said, the toolkit for a lot of stuff in this game, for even for most builds, is so expansive now that like I feel like I can be more versatile in combat no matter what playstyle I'm playing. Whereas in the old games, it would be like, oh, if I'm magic user, I have a lot of options, but if I'm anything else, it's just like just keep swinging until you're done.
Yeah, I still wish that the combat was a little deeper in the same way that like Sekiro was,
Right.
because like Sekiro
Hey,
has
Risky.
like you get so
Uh,
many tools in Sekiro, like, and you get so many different ways to deal with different enemy attacks, like the
right.
jumping over the sweeps, the Mikiri counter for thrusts, the parries, it's like for everything that an enemy can throw at you, you have tools to deal with them. It just comes down to your ability, your raw ability to actually execute it. Which is why I think the Sekiro combat is combat advanced. That said, like I said, once you do
No.
get those more like flashy abilities and you can sort of open it up a little bit, at least for me with the Bloodhound step, you can move a little bit faster. When you have a larger stamina bar, you can just button to keep positioning stuff. I find that to be helpful and make the fighting a little more dynamic as well. So, yeah, I think it improves over time, but I still think the variety is crazy, no doubt, because there's so many different builds and so many different kinds of weapons, things like that.
Yeah, the variety is
I think
great.
it's like it. You know what it feels like? It feels like it's like a million miles wide, but only like a couple inches deep. Whereas Sekiro was a million miles deep, but only like a couple inches wide.
Yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
I think that especially like goes back to the like they can only spend so much like dev effort and time on like one thing or the other. And with open world games, like this is a good example of like people want these like this version of open world games where it's like I want everything to be unique and like every monster has like a different palette or whatever. But the problem
Yeah,
with that is like when you do open world, it's like you either get, one really good solid deep game that doesn't have a lot, to it or in terms of just like length or like content, or you get the open world version, which is we can only really scattershot a lot of little things with some set pieces like legacy dungeons, and then everything else is going to feel real samey because like that's what making an open world game takes,
hmm
even in Dark Souls. Um,
yeah, and it's true because I think also, if to be fair to FromSoft, like the Sekiro model was built on a world that was dealing, for the most part, with humanoid enemies using humanoid weapons.
right.
Right. So in that sense, like the variety of attacks that you get and the variety of types of enemies that you get is going to be limited relative to what you're getting in this giant open world. The enemies in this game are probably more varied, crazier, than any game ever made. I think that's a fair statement to say. Um, to be fair to FromSoft, I do think it would be challenging to fit every one of those enemies into that sort of rubric that Sekiro did, which was like there are sweeps, there are thrusts, and then there are parries and things like that. It'd be harder to program and design all that sort of variety of enemies can work within that combat system. So maybe that's why they didn't really go for that.
Right, because part of it's also like QA testing and just, being able to know that it's not broken. Because you can add a lot of stuff, but if it's all, you have to spend dev time to make it not buggy. And, when you have a world that wide, it's very hard to say, okay, are we going to be able to release this, and not push it back a year with how long it should take to test all these different monsters?
Yeah. Yeah, and that said, it's pretty impressive that they really only had that one minor delay right at the end there. Other than that, it was pretty much, on schedule. The fact that I think Sekiro came out in 2018. Am I right about that? 2018? Maybe 2019?
I think it was, 2018.
Yeah, so like that dev cycle is pretty good. Like a game that's this. I know it has graphical issues and performance issues on PC specifically, but for other than the like tech issues, it's pretty damn polished. Like it's really fleshed out. It's really well made. Like the quality of the game is still pretty fucking high. The fact that it only took that long to develop this is pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Xanamore said the talisman says immune to fall damage, but that's not true. You can still die from fall damage. So maybe it just makes
must be a
it
limit.
high.
Yeah, it must be a limit of some kind. Or maybe it is that there are certain places that you just can't fall into. If you fall into it, you die.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense. Like, there's still got to be like, if you fall into water, you would still die, I would assume.
There are at least 3 places I can think of at the top of my head that you would typically fall into, or that you can't get to until you get a certain way into the story. So I would imagine that if you try and break the game and fall into it, you will die. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you're going to do it properly, you would get teleported there by a NPC, or like you'd have to proc a specific world change by following a quest line from an NPC before you're actually able to get there. There are multiple places in this game that are like that. You can't get to them without progressing the story a certain way.
Right. Yeah, and
so I imagine the talisman probably will not let you sequence break like that.
Am I out of? Yeah, I am. Oh boy. I've just been mindlessly going through this while we've been talking. I have no clue what it was I was trying to do before.
Oh, I love this dungeon. This is a cool dungeon.
I do. I like this one because it. I think it was one of the first ones I encountered, like the undead thing.
Yeah.
Where like you have to like hit them.
Hit them twice.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I found that out on accident. Because I literally was just like waving my claws around at something, and I noticed that it stopped the respawn. I was like, oh, sweet.
So is that your favorite weapon to date, the claws, so far?
So I picked the claws because whenever I do dex, I usually just pick something different. On my last dex, I did like a dex quality-ish kind of knight in Dark Souls 3, which I used the Lothric straight sword. I liked the claws because I was originally just going to use the scimitars and then just pick. I didn't even have a weapon in mind when I started the game on opening night. But I found those claws when I was in Stormvale, and I thought, okay, I'm not doing a whole lot of damage with dex, but these have blood buildup, and they just look cool as hell. I was trying to pick, like, I know claws aren't new in Dark Souls. They've been in, I think, 3. But I was trying to do the thing which was trying to pick a new weapon, like one that I haven't used before in a Souls game, or one that's new to the series with Elden Ring. But I hadn't done claws yet. And I picked them up in 3, but I wanted to use those because I wanted to make myself work with a weird weapon, and claws seemed weird enough. Like, they're very short range. They have blood buildup, and they've got good slashing damage, but they also like they also have like a different move set. Like, they're very much like built to be aggressive. and I was trying to see like how non-aggressive can I be with them and still be able to and still be able to like fight bosses. So mostly I picked them just because they're weird, but they're quickly becoming one of my favorite types of weapons in the game. I've always been big
they're
on like the
flashy as
sights
fuck,
and stuff.
right? They're super flashy.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing. They're flashy, but when I started using them, I was like, okay, it's not super like tricky to use. Like it makes enough sense. And the best part was when I started using them, I would do like the dual wielding and like the double claw opener. And I don't do a lot of poise damage, but the amount of damage I would do just like from like a jumping like dive attack as an opener would be like I could kill him in 2 hits basically.
Yeah.
So I started just melting dudes in Stormveil, and I was like, all right, I could get into this.
You found any cool armors that you like?
Honestly, I haven't found a lot. Like, I've found armor is like the one weird thing in this game. I haven't found a whole lot. I started with the warrior stuff.
Found some cool ones. It took a long time. I don't know if it's like that way for everybody, but like I haven't found cool ones until like sort of late game. Some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I started with as the warrior class, even though I'm doing dex, because I wasn't sure how much I wanted to do like full like assassin versus like another quality build.
Yeah,
this is bad. I feel bad. So I went with warrior, and like the warrior stuff is fine. I mean, it's for starting armor, it's cool as hell. I mean, compared to like some of the other starting armor we had. But I've been wearing that and like mostly a mix of that and the exile armor from Stormveil, which is pretty cool. But I haven't found like how in Dark Souls 1 you get a lot of like the signature armors for people pretty early, like the well, I guess not early, but like the Lautrec stuff and like Havels, and there's like a lot more like there's as many like unique armors for like named characters as there are like unique weapons. And I feel like in this, I haven't really been picking up a lot of armor, at least not through all of Limgrave and some of Liurnia.
Yeah, there's just not that much that I've found in Limgrave generally. And the stuff that is there is usually like drops from the enemies, and the enemies aren't like super impressive.
Right. Yeah, I haven't found a lot of armor, but which is funny because I was gonna play more Fashion Souls in this one because going back to claws and not using shields, because I used shield in DS3 too, has kind of got me back into the whole like realm of fuck it, I don't really care what I'm using or not using.
Yeah.
And so for equipment, I was like, yeah, I'll play more Fashion Souls. Besides like the occasional like one piece I'll switch out, but I haven't really found a lot of other stuff. I found like the leather, I found the Godric Knight stuff, like the first few armors you always get in every Dark Souls game, which is like the stuff you see other enemies wearing. But I haven't found anything like really cool that like really struck out to me.
Well, the cool thing that I've seen, a lot of these armors, not just some of them, a lot of them, the legendary armors, they have passive buffs. So like if you wear the full set, like
I saw the space for that on the equipment thing in the inventory, which is really fucking cool.
Yeah. So like I'm wearing one right now. I'm wearing a full set that just like totally buffs your stealth. So like it makes you very difficult to detect when you're doing stealthy shit.
See, that is I will say the other thing I've really liked about Elden Ring is stealth, and it's part of what made me want to go into Dex. Is like when I play like Skyrim and most any RPG where you have like a build where you can pick your like type of damage, it's almost impossible for me to not play like a stealth based character, because stealth in video games is just so like not overpowered, but if you're willing to put the time into it, it lets you skip the majority of frustration of most games. Usually.
Yeah, if you are good at it, and if the mechanics of the game support it,
yes, that's the other key.
It can be game breaking.
Yeah,
like the stealth in Sekiro can really like it can sort of cut the difficulty of boss fights in half, because some of the bosses you can actually stealth out the gate and take one of their whole life bars.
I just forgot I used 2 runes to level up, and I did not level up. So now I am entering the boss fight with my 1700, which is fine because luckily I've been playing the game long enough that this still seems like nothing.
You can do the old school Dark Souls 1 trick of just quitting out to the menu.
Oh, true.
Collect, and then collect your souls, and then because it should kick you back out to the front of this fight rather than in the fight when you log back in.
Yeah, I forgot that was even an option. Did this guy start with 2/3 of his health?
Uh, I don't know, because when did you? Because you just now summoned the wolves.
Yeah, so they've only done like a little bit of damage, like that much. I I haven't hit this
This
guy yet, and he started with like 2/3 of his health.
Black Knife Assassin. I think this is the guy that his
He
armor is what I'm wearing now. This is the guy who has the stealth.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I know he gives you the I have the so another good dex talisman is the I think this is the one, the assassin one. He gives you the one
Yeah.
where critical hits give you back HP,
Yes.
which is
Correct.
very cool, but also something that my other gripe with stealth, or at least with like the variety of stuff, is like maybe this is a good thing that I'm just having a hard time making a decision. There are some really good talismans for stealth. Man, I am not. The bulls are doing all the damage here. There's some really cool ones. Like I've been using one for a while that was the jump attacks are like improved because
Yes.
during Margit, when I learned that jump attacks do more like stance damage, so I figured I would do more of that. I don't always get critical hits because I'm not parrying with the claws, although I do get a lot of backstabs whenever I stealth. But I figured that the assassin's thing is really better for someone that's using like a buckler or something, because if you want to get the most out of that talisman, you should be getting parries and backstabs to get the critical hits. And I don't really do that with the claws. I mostly go for backstabs, and if the backstab doesn't work, I just go full frenzy mode once stealth is broken, and then I'm just like, all right, well, I'm gonna, jeez. Oh, I got whiff punished there real hard.
This is one of those guys who in the early game is just he punishes the early game sort of weakness
Yeah,
because
and
he's so fast. You can't really get in. You don't really get a lot of attack chances. Having the summons are really the only way.
I knew that coming into this fight too, knowing that I'm playing like basically a barbarian, and I was like, all right, well,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna change up my fighting strategy here, but I've got wolves, so that is something that I do like about like that fight was challenging enough even with the spirit summon, so it doesn't feel like spirit summons are like a cheese. In some cases they can be, and like when I first fought this dude, I was like less than a minute maybe flat with spirits, but they don't feel to me like they're cheesy because there's been plenty of fights in this where I have spirits out and I still die and I still have the same, like, I feel like I've struggled enough that I've earned the fight, which has been really nice. But
Yeah, like I said, I leaned pretty heavy, pretty hard into the summons for a good long while, just because they're so much faster. Like especially the dogs, they're so much faster. They draw so much aggro that it creates more openings and it just makes it safer to be inside on dudes.
yeah,
Because I feel like early
100%.
game being inside on guys is just not really feasible. Because you're not doing enough damage to make it worth it because you can only get 1 or 2 shots in, and the dodge is not strong enough on its own, just raw, to really save you from like to get out. You can't really get out because the recovery frames of the dodge are so kind of shitty.
Yeah,
So until you buff the dodge, being inside is really not viable. So that's why the summons are like super important, I think, in the early game.
yeah, and Margit was one of the fights where that's actually like when I was doing Margit, I hadn't figured out the spirit bell yet. I got it from this character, the one that a lot of people missed.
Mhm.
And I had it before the fight. I didn't understand how to use it. I didn't realize that I just had to equip the ashes, or that I had to equip the bell itself. So Margit was one of the first fights that made me realize like I pretty much need to use these spirits no matter what.
Yeah.
And it also helped that I was seeing on Twitter a lot. People were like, this game is kind of designed so that you sort of have to use spirits, or it's implied that like you're not going into these fights solo, which is always an option. Like obviously there's still people that only do solo runs, but when I read that, I was kind of like, you know what, that is a new feature of the game. So I'm literally going to play Elden Ring for whatever the new stuff is, and then just try and utilize as much new stuff as I can. And I've had a much easier time because of that, because I've been using spirits. I've been trying to do like, using the horse. I've been messing around with stealth and jumping, and it works great. But yeah, I can see why for a lot of older veterans, like this is also a hard thing because they're trying to play it more like Dark Souls, and some of the newer systems they're sort of missing them. Because for the first few hours, I even forgot jumping was a thing. I didn't realize it was a dedicated jump button for a little while.
Yeah, that's one of the new additions to the mechanics that I actually do really like, because that's something that does let you get in a little bit safer. And it is like the only way for a non-shield, non-heavy player to really attack poise.
Yeah,
Because you
yeah,
do
and
get the poise benefit from that.
I noticed that, yeah, because during the Margit fight, I get those tooltips for like if you do a jump attack, they do more stance damage, and I also noticed that they're good openers too. Like whenever you're trying to
Yeah.
fight 'cause since the kick is now an Ash of War, I was struggling trying to figure out how am I going to open up shield users if I'm using
Mhm.
some other Ash of War. Well, obviously I could use the Impaling Strike, but when I was fighting stuff in Stormvale, I would jump at stuff all the time, and like the scimitars would hit just above like a great shield's like or tower shield's like range. So I've just been
Yeah.
jumping on anyone that has a shield, and it's
Yeah.
awesome. I love it.
Well, not to sound like a broken record, but that's another thing the Bloodhound dodge can really do for you, because you can actually just get right behind dudes without them doing their sort of tracking. Because usually in this game, in Dark Souls games, even the enemies have lock on too, right? So when you move, they turn. It's like they're locked onto you. This basically breaks that lock on. You can get behind enemies. So if you can't break their guard, you can at least get behind them. You can even get backstabs, like free backstabs out of it.
Yeah,
So pretty cool that way.
yeah, and
But yeah,
I
the jump attack is like, it's kind of a godsend, because it's like it really is one of the only ways to get that poise damage from a lighter build.
oh yeah, for sure, and it looks cool on the scimitar too. I will say, like the animation for the jump attack is legitimately cool. And another thing that I noticed this, I think I showed this on Nate's stream, but like when you jump and you attack, so if I hit A and then I attack like in midair, the attack finishes as I'm going down. But if you hit A and then hit attack right after, it finishes closer to your actual top of your jump versus like there. So if you're trying to hit something in the air, this is how I beat the sword birds so easily.
Yeah, you
because
basically
I
hit them at the
realized
same
that.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would just like do like the really quick like 1-2, and then I would actually be able to hit stuff in the air instead of like waiting until I like land again and then the attack goes off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool because it's just like the dodge. There's some little subtleties to the timing of things, and the jump has been really cool. It's still one of those things I do in most games where I forget, like they give you the toolkit of like the 5 things and I forget 2 of them because I'm so busy just trying to remember like the first 2 or the first 3. But yeah, it's really cool because like when I was first going up against the Tree Sentinel, I tried to stealth him. I tried to just jump at him. I tried to do like all the new shit they'd already given me. And even though none of it worked, it did like make me realize like how different, how many different approaches we have now to combat, which is just so good. And it feels good. I will say that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Nate thinks. I haven't really picked his brain about like his experience of Elden Ring so far. I know he hasn't played a ton of it, but I think he's about 20 hours in, so he's got enough to know.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what he thinks coming directly from Dark Souls 1. Because he just finished that, and now he's playing Elden Ring, and I wonder if his opinion will be different because he's used to now the Dark Souls 1 mechanics. And I will say, regardless of any other criticisms that I've had about the combat mechanics of this game, it's definitely an evolution just in terms of like control feel and feeling more professionally done now than it ever was before.
Oh,
It's definitely
absolutely.
smoother. It feels better just to use, right? Better in the hand. It's still not Sekiro level, but it's just like it feels modern. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The quality of life of this game, and it definitely, I will say, coming from, I play 1 on my Switch every now and then. I started a character a few days ago, and I've been kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit between that. But coming from 3, especially, the quality of life is still here, and it feels so much more like approachable. Like having a dedicated jump button, having stats like strength not tied to your endurance, and vice versa. Like just those little changes. The games are still primarily the same, like the timings are still similar enough, but like those little stat changes, or those little like, oh, we added a jump thing, we added a stealth thing, it makes me feel like this is still probably one of the better iterations of the Souls formula in a game, because it feels good to handle. The exploration, the progress legitimately feels good. Like finding bonfires here doesn't just feel super desperate. Sometimes it's just like convenience. Like,
Yeah.
I would agree. I think that this is for me, like, obviously the dodge timing is still weird. There's a few the way that they always do like Ashes of War and the weapon stuff is always going to be different. But like, I mean, overall, like this game has the most in a Souls game that makes me like want to come back to it more. I
Yeah,
have
there's just
yet.
so much to fucking do.
Oh, there's
And
so
it's
much to do,
and
and like
it's variety. They don't like reuse shit very much at all. Like it's just super good.
yeah,
It really is.
there's so much to come back to, and this I have yet to. I've been frustrated with this game, like when I was in Liurnia and I was just getting my shit rocked, not even by bosses, but by like just everyday dudes on the side of the road in the forest.
Yeah, yeah,
I have yet to come to a point in this game where I try a boss. I boot up the game, try a boss for like 30 minutes, and then I put it back down without beating it. That
Mhm.
happened to me in DS1 and 3 like multiple times. In this game, when that does happen, I just go off and do something else in the open world. I might find a new item, and then I come back and I feel like completely refreshed. So instead of
Yeah.
like logging out of the game, I just like go experiment with some other stuff, find something new, and then I come back, and I feel like there's almost like zero stress, as not the same way that there was with the old games. And it's I love it. It's so much more
Yeah, and I think
refreshing
the
to
States
not
of
feel
America
like
help a
I'm
lot with that. I
yeah.
think there's still some weird choices. Like there's at least one boss fight in this that does actually have like an old school boss run to it, which I don't really understand why they do that. And it's a two-phase boss fight that requires a boss run, which is even worse. But those are really few and far between, I think, and like it's just been super. It's just been way less punishing. Like the price of failure has been way lower.
Right. And it's
Um,
not like it's removed the punish entirely. It like because with Margit, it's very punishing, but it's not
yeah,
punishing at every single
the
turn.
the gameplay is punishing, but it's not
Yes.
punishing in the sense that like I'm gonna just make this hard because it takes so much time to get back to the boss. You know what I mean? Like
Right. It's
that
not
part,
punishing with
like
the narrow hallways where
yeah,
you have to do. You only have this one place to go to really, and like, trying to go back anywhere else, pre fast travel was pretty much impossible. So it doesn't feel like I'm stuck in this one hallway and I just have to keep trying, this Groundhog's Day solution. Whereas with this, it's sort of like, well, you've got options and you can approach it from multiple angles because it's open world, which is
right,
super cool.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think overall my opinion has improved of this game, definitely, especially Endgame. Um, but I don't think that anything that I said before about the early game I'm taking back. I still think there are some balance issues with some of the build choices that you can make. Um, I
yeah,
don't think I don't think that they were very fair to a lot of the players that wanted to play a certain way. Which, when it comes to like a straight up RPG, which this is, like it's one of the more RPG games of the action adventure genre. It, I don't think it's. I think it's a little bit uncool to like make certain classes just kind of naturally not as powerful.
yeah,
Um, and I'm particularly sensitive to that because I'm coming from a D&D campaign where I'm playing kind of the worst class in the game. So, and I like every time we have a session, I like get violently reminded of that fact. It's like,
right. And
like
yeah,
man,
coming to that again in Dark
fuck.
Souls is not fun.
Right, yeah. So, but again, to your point, like the fact that it's so much less punishing, it makes it like, okay, I'm basically what I'm doing is I'm playing on hard mode. All right, I get it.
Right.
At least it's respecting my time more than these games ever used to.
Right, because that's the other thing about this, right? Is like when people were like first starting to talk about Dark Souls and like, oh, it's one of the hardest games in the world, blah blah blah. Part of it was just like the reason why it wasn't attractive to many people is because when a game is that difficult up front, it's like there are people that attracts, but for most people, it's like I don't have time for that kind of
Yeah,
stuff anymore. Like I can't be playing
exactly.
games like I was when I was a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And this game probably more than most. Like if this game was as punishing time wise as Dark Souls, if you add in this incredible open world that takes 1,000 years to fully
Oh
explore, like
God,
that would
yeah.
just be egregious. Like
Right.
there'd be no way to do it. It'd be impossible for anyone to do this and have a life at the same time.
It would be one of those games that like just does it for the sake of having that title of like,
Yeah,
oh, it's the hardest game in the world. Which there are games that are designed to be like that, like the Trick Mario games and stuff. But at the same time, like, if you want like a bigger, more successful game, making it more accessible to more people is usually better. And you can make
Yeah.
it accessible and still have like scaling difficulty. It's just a matter of how you like what the game literally is.
Yeah,
And this
for
feels like
sure.
this is the best version of that, especially for like the Souls like genre, especially coming
So,
from FromSoft themselves.
how many hours would you say you have into it now, Tom?
I
Roughly.
I don't know if my overlay is coming up on stream. I have 60 hours total apparently.
Okay.
Which
So
I
you
would say
played.
about maybe 10
What do you need?
collectively
I don't want
is
any trouble.
most of the open world stuff.
Right.
Or not even open world stuff, just like just goofing around or like just like yeah, like part of those like 10 hours, part of that sixth of what I've done so far, I'd say has been like not making progress basically.
Yeah. So I mean, but you put like that's a healthy amount of hours into a game. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
think at this point
Well,
you might be able to answer
anyway
this
then.
question, at least from a preliminary kind of standpoint. Where would you put this in the FromSoft like library? Like, where does this rank for you compared to the other FromSoft games that you've played?
So that's an interesting point. So the ones I've played before, for anyone in chat that doesn't know, is I started with DS1 and then I did DS3. I own Bloodborne, but I didn't get to start it because by the time I was going to start Bloodborne, this game was like less than a month away. And my first time I played Dark Souls 1 took me 3 years on and off, so I figured I'm not going to have enough time. In terms of the ones that I've played, I think it's hard to not have a bias because it's modern, like you said, like it has those quality of life improvements. I think that it's definitely like towards the top for me just because this is the most fun I've had with the Dark Souls in a while. Whereas with
That's
some of the other
true.
games, I like those games a lot, but I entered the series not really respecting it. The whole point was for me to go in and die a bunch because it was the hardest game in the world at the time. People said
Yeah.
that. So coming to it now, this is the most like progress I've ever done in a Dark Souls game, and it's also the most like I already have experience in the games coming to it, but there's so much that I feel like I'm able to do in this one. Part of that is because I've played 1 and 3, but part of it's also because there's just so much more. There's so many more options to this. It's so much more accessible. Whereas in the first game, I was lost as hell for hours. There was shit I didn't discover about that game until after I beat it, like core mechanics to that game. And this game still suffers from that, but it has the most like lateral momentum, I guess. You can I feel like I don't feel punished for like trying something new and making new characters.
Yeah, and it's like it's not telling you that, well, you either do this or you stop playing.
Right, exactly. Whereas in the old games, like the risk for that felt way worse, where it was like
Yeah.
I'm still trapped in this narrow hallway and my stats are not what I think they are, or I don't know what they do, and I'm using the totally wrong stuff and I have nothing
There are
else.
just a lot of pinch points.
Right. Overall, I'd say, I don't know. It might be my favorite FromSoft game, but I think part of that is still clouded by the bias of how new the game is.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's my favorite having played previous FromSoft games, especially because I was able to get into this really quick. Like I skipped the tutorial, like I said earlier, and that wasn't even a problem. I mean, 60 hours in, I've only experienced like I've only just now gotten to like the second region, like truly. So it's really hard
Yeah.
for me to say. But in terms of an open world game that has the FromSoft thing, it probably is my favorite. But that is just barely above 3, probably, and then
Mhm.
I don't know. Part of my bias with the FromSoft games is I've had more experience with one. I have the most hours in one across multiple platforms. But
Mhm.
the more modern a game is, the more quality of life it has, the more I tend to like it, just because
Yeah.
it's more
Well,
accessible.
because you're not 13 years old anymore. Like you
Right.
can't afford to like deal with like the shitty quality of life stuff.
Yeah, I think overall my ranking of FromSoft games is this 3 and 1 are all really close together because one has the nostalgia value, and it is still playable if when you know what you're doing. This and 3 are so new that it's really hard to separate those two, and I still do like 3 a lot from having beaten it finally. But this game I think just has the most like I can pick it up, play a few hours, and I feel like I'm actually like getting somewhere. Whereas with 1
Yeah.
and 3, I spent so long where I would like I would, especially in 1 where there wasn't fast travel for a while, I would like try a boss for like 30 minutes, or not even 30 minutes, 15 minutes, get frustrated with it, try and go somewhere else, which was like a huge time investment to like, all right, well, now I got to walk all the way back and I have to fight through the run-ups all
Yeah,
the
there was
way
too much
back to
stuff
that
that
spot.
wasn't fun to get to
Right.
the
And,
fun
and,
stuff.
you know, for the first few times, like it was fun the first time, and I still have good memories of it, but it's not something that I would want to do for the first time like ever again.
Well, I hadn't thought about it that way, Tom, because when you said, like, when I asked the question, you said that Elden Ring is probably the most fun. I think that is the right point, because, like, to me, I've loved all the Dark Souls games, even Dark Souls 2.
Right.
I've loved Bloodborne. I really love Sekiro. But they're not always fun. It's almost like a movie that you really like, but it's not like it's like a fun movie,
Right. It's
but
not
it's a
always
movie that you really
entertaining
like.
at that point.
Exactly. Entertainment isn't the value that you're getting out of it. You're getting something different out of it. Whereas this one, I completely agree with you. I think the strength of this one is that this is actually just a fun game, just because the world is so just fun to look at and be in and explore. So like, there's more opportunity to have fun, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, I think
yeah,
my game just died. But to your point, yeah, I think that's why, like, even with like the recency bias of this game, I think it is, even the old Dark Souls games were fun, and I did get that, like, the serotonin from like beating a boss or even just like entering a new area.
yeah,
But yeah, with this game, it definitely is the whole, like, you know, steak versus potato chips argument, right? It's like the Elden Ring being the potato chips, where there's a lot of stuff, but a lot of it is, you know, it's not as deep as the other games. Sometimes
sure,
the deepness of the Souls games was kind of annoying, in the sense that, like, yeah, it's really deep and it's really cool, but I don't feel like I can experiment with stuff as much. Like, if I'm trying to like do, like, they have all these consumable items in this game and in like 1 and 3, but like I never really understood how to play those into things because I spent so much time just trying to get to the boss, and I couldn't, you know, there was no item crafting, which is another thing I know we've barely hit on. I would barely ever use consumables because I figured, what's the point? They barely do anything. If I have to do
yeah.
damage
I
buildup,
never use consumables.
right? Because I would have had
Yeah.
to like either do a lot of like internet research on like Fextra Life or something, or I would
Mhm.
have just had to have like spent a few hours just building up the resources to go buy them with souls and then go to the boss and then try it out. Which is, you know, unless you're like a speedrunning team, it's almost impossible to be like playing around in this case and trying to find something new was just so like, it felt impossible. It was just like, what's the point? It's going to take me 5 hours to get that whole thing built up, and then by the time I realize it, it's like, or you could just smash them 3 times with the strength build and then you're done.
Yeah, in
Um,
this game, you can actually, like, you can treat it more like a Destiny, like drop in, drop out. Like, I got an hour to spare. I'm gonna go in and do some like crazy shit. Try to break the game, maybe do some exploration, jump around, do some platforming, go to places I haven't seen before, and then drop out again. Like, there's no, like, the stakes are lower based on, like, when you get in there and play. So
yeah,
yeah, like the level of fun that you can have, I think, is definitely way bigger than the other
yeah,
games.
and I noticed
Hadn't thought of
this especially because of like what we were talking about before is like, so there were times in the first few hours where I forgot this was a Souls game. Like,
yeah,
I would literally, like, would pick it up, I'd be playing for hours, and my, you know, brain just totally turned off. And then I would, like, reach a new area, and this happened in Liurnia, where I would try and, like, fight a new group of, like, just regular dudes, and I would just be greedy as hell, just going in, hitting, like, all of my stamina, just doing all the heavy attacks, and I would die, like, multiple times, and I'd be like, "I don't understand why I'm not able to beat this thing." And then I would, like, literally, like, take a step back and be like, "Oh, right. This is a FromSoft game. I have to do timing. I have to, like, specifically know how much stamina resource I have going into this fight." But because I was doing the open world stuff, just mindlessly going like I do in, like, Skyrim, I
yeah.
literally forgot how to fight. I would just
You
walk
go
in
from
there and
not
be
having
like,
ever to try to
yeah,
having
I
to
would just
try really
walk in there
hard.
and be like, I'm throwing attacks at them. How come they're
Yeah,
not dying to me like every other open world game does?
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and yeah, and I think that is why I find this the most fun, is because it does still have, it's FromSoft at its core, right? Like, when I go to do a main boss, I know it's going to be a, you know, classic FromSoft thing where I got to get used to the timing. I have to find like what my strategy is going to be. But when I
yeah,
don't want to play specifically that version of the game, the open world version still has the same combat, but you can approach things differently. You can approach it like, you can take a break and play Breath of the Wild for, like, you know, an hour or so, and then you can come back to Dark Souls whenever you want. It combines two of some of my most favorite games ever in the same game, and you can sort of switch those modes and still have the same character and same build. I think that's part of why I love Elden Ring so much is I can build for, this is the version of me that's just going out farming dudes. This is the version of me that's going to try and kill Margit. And then this is the version of me that's going to try to go to a new area and have no idea what kind of like magic stuff I'm going to have to encounter.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it so much is because you're able to sort of like switch on and off from that pretty much whenever you want. And that makes the frustrating punishing part I still respect, but I can also approach it in a much easier way that lets me like pick and use everything. Whereas in the old games, I'd use like 3 things and that was it.
Yeah. And like I have more criticisms, I think, of this game than most people who are currently playing it. But like I said, it's just been ramping up since I've been playing it. I've just been enjoying it more and more as the game has opened up a little bit. So
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because I'm only now in like the second region. I've been taking my time with it and haven't played a lot this week, but that's
yeah, Tom, I think when you get to like hour 80, 90, 100, and you're into like more of the northern area, and like because things get wacky, things get super wacky.
oh I've only
Yeah.
heard snippets, which I'm excited.
Yeah, yeah. So
Oof.
I think if you're into that type of thing, like if you like it now, it's gonna be it gets crazy, man. Get hyped for it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. And it's so
I'm
much bigger than you think it is. Even look, you're looking at it now, and you're like, man, this game is so big. It just keeps going. Like it just doesn't stop. Like I don't know where the end of this.
Oh, it was like I said earlier when I hit the Sofria River well and I
Yeah.
went underground. I was like, oh my god! I've literally
Yeah.
paused like 4 times and said, oh my god, every time the map expands.
Yeah, and it's you sort of go back and forth between being intimidated and being like super excited, doing both at the same time. It's like
Yeah,
this is amazing, but I have no idea where to start.
it does give me the open world problem I had with Breath of the Wild and everything else, which is
Like decision paralysis.
right because it does the triangle thing. I see like, oh, that's the next big thing.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in Limgrave, I'm literally like, if I'm going to a new region, I don't go from like interest point to interest point. I see the interest point and then I like circle around it like a vulture. And then
Yeah.
I just go on like the sides. I look at the most boring shit first. That way when I go to the interesting stuff, I'm like, all right, I've saved the best for last. And yet the
Yeah.
problem with that is that the game usually thinks you're going to the interesting stuff first. And so that lets you go do the harder, more unique stuff is
Yeah.
in the interest point. And so I always end up going to things much later than I should because I was like, oh, I never bothered to go in there because I was so busy distracted by this pebble.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it's a whole vibe. This game is like, say what you will about FromSoft games, like I never would have expected it to translate to open world as well as it has.
oh, same.
Um,
I thought it could be a complete flop potentially.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason why I didn't think it was going to be a flop is just because it's FromSoft. I don't think that they're really capable of
Right.
just
They also
flop.
understand that unless it's fun to some degree, they're not going to release it.
Right.
There's
And
got to be
they've
some
got-
element of is it fun?
and they've like nailed down this formula. Like if they just follow that formula, it's going to be quality one way or the other.
Oh,
The fact that it's-
100%.
To me, it's just like the volume of stuff they've packed in here is so preposterously good and so preposterously huge.
Yeah.
It's not like anything I've ever seen before. I mean, it's definitely like as far as world building goes, the only thing that I've seen rival it is Breath of the Wild. Like as far as like size and variety and things you can do and
Yeah. I do
imagination
think
and all that stuff.
I do think Miyazaki definitely did take from not like ripped or whatever, but like was inspired by Breath of the Wild and the way they lay things out. Not just like by how you go to things, but how they physically are laid out, and it works well. I think that that's something that if you're going to do open world, it doesn't make any sense to not start from the Breath of the Wild template and then.
I agree.
go
I
outward.
think they absolutely had to borrow things. I think the
for sure.
principal thing that they did
And
the
it
same as
works.
Breath of the Wild was they respected the player enough to know that the player is going to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like
it's an eventuality. Yeah.
Exactly, which makes it feel like a quest. It makes you feel like you're living in the world. It makes you feel like you earn stuff for exploration. Like it's not Ubisoft where it's like, hey, there are 70 things here, go do all of these things.
Right.
It very much feels like a lived-in world that you have to participate in. You have to bring something of
Mhm.
yourself to it to enjoy it, and like it challenges you that way, the same way that Breath of the Wild did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's great so far. I'm hoping that it continues to be great. Um, I don't know. I think Sekiro will always be my favorite, just because to me the combat system is just unparalleled, and that's what's most important to me. But you know, I'm very happy with it improving the way how much it's improved over the last probably 20 hours that I've played with it. It's been getting
Yeah.
its claws into me, so that's been
For
good.
having not played, I guess the other modern games, obviously Sekiro was the most, well, besides Demon Souls remake, I guess Sekiro was the most recent FromSoft game, and then I think Bloodborne. Well, Bloodborne was around 2 or 3 ish. Having not played some of the more modern takes where they started to like really branch out with Bloodborne and Sekiro, I think that
Hmm.
this game is definitely still up there for me. But it is a game that knows it has learned from those previous ones. Like I think there are some elements of Sekiro and Bloodborne in this in
They're
very subtle
definitely.
ways.
Look, Quick Step is absolutely, especially the Bloodhound step, is
Oh God,
absolutely
yeah,
from Bloodborne. There is a vanishing step in Bloodborne that's effectively the exact same move.
right,
So, like in that sense, the only difference is like we didn't know it was there, and it's not there until later on in the game. So it's like, uh, to me, it's definitely been an equalizer for me. It's made the combat open up quite a bit. So but yeah, I think to your point, it absolutely does take things from Sekiro. I just wanted it to take a little bit more. But as we talked about earlier, I think to be fair to them, I think there's a limit to how much Sekiro this could be, given the variety of enemies that they want to put in here. So,
yeah. The open
you
world
know,
does had that limiting factor to it, where again,
yeah,
it's like the depth argument, right? Where you can only have so much of like poise in this is what it is because they try to do an actual like meter for every major boss. That's a
yeah,
whole other realm of testing and making sure that it actually works and is balanced for everybody for every build.
yeah. The more variety that you give your main character, the player character, the less variety I think you can give the enemies, and vice versa. Like the more variety you give the enemies, the less variety you can give
Oh yeah,
the player character. So
yeah,
I want to be
100%.
fair to FromSoft and like understand that like there's a give and take there. But I would have liked to see a little more Sekiro, but you know,
Yeah,
it's then we wouldn't get. I mean, I prefer the setting of this. I prefer the world of this. You know, the RPG stuff I like more. I was sad about Sekiro not having like all the cool RPG mechanics that these games have. So
yeah,
you give a little to get a little, I suppose. But if the game keeps improving over the next few hours like it has been doing, then um, you know, eh, could it be as good as Sekiro for me? Maybe, possibly. I don't know.
right. There's a
If the
chance.
combat, yeah, because if the combat gets close enough, like I said, I don't think it's ever going to be as good as Sekiro. But if it gets close enough, then maybe the world and all the rest of it will tip the scales for me. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm loving it so far, but I can totally understand that. Like as it goes on, obviously there will be some new things and new features that I haven't seen yet. But I mean, I'm for only being about maybe I can't even say a third, maybe a sixth
Yeah, now you
of
have
the
a
way
second
through it.
build already.
Or yeah, yeah.
Like, are you planning on like carrying this one through for a while too?
I mean, yeah, for like the strength builds and stuff, I do that a lot with the different Souls games. I think I did it in 3. My Dex one is probably the one I will carry through. And I anywhere I've struggled, I've seen a way to find through or to change my build up, so I'm not super worried about it.
Yeah, and you
Um,
can respec too. So
right, yeah, and then that part, just even knowing that's a thing, that's something I'm glad I do know ahead of time because just knowing that is
yeah.
part of what helps me come back to the game. Knowing like, well,
Mhm.
if stuff ever really does get that tough, there is a way out. There is a way to change up what I do. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah,
Um,
I'll stick with this character for a bit for my stream. My game died a little while ago, which is why there's no gameplay chat. Because that actually I've reached a few crashes recently, but I will say it hasn't been terrible. It hasn't been like as bad as it was the first few hours.
I've seen improvements. Yeah,
Yeah, they
like
have been working on it a lot.
yeah, I think it's way more playable now than it was. Like I've got a pretty beefy rig, and I was having the same problems everybody else was. I think it was pretty clear that it wasn't like um, specs related. It was like just shaders not loading properly. Um, so maybe they were maybe couple memory leaks too, possibly. But for the most part, I think they've done good work on it. I don't think it's there yet. I think, but it's way more tolerable now. I think.
Right.
I haven't had any actual crashes, to be honest with you. I've had a lot of frame stutters, but I haven't
Oh,
had any
really?
crashes.
It
Yeah,
might
knock
just
on wood.
be the card that I have runs it. I mean, fine. Like even at like
Yeah.
low and medium settings, the game still looks beautiful. But
Mm.
it also could just be an object thing with my card. Um,
Are you running Radeon? AMD?
it's a um, what is my card? It's a 1060 6 gig,
Oh,
which is
okay.
obviously it's an older card at this point. But the fact that it is and it still runs medium settings well, I'm genuinely impressed. They optimized the game super well.
Yeah, I think th- I think the only limitation I think for that card would be the memory, probably. Otherwise, I think it would be fine for like uh, anything. You could probably get away with 1440p even on that.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
guessing this game.
yeah. I mean, I
Console games
just
are usually not that demanding. I just think they don't port it to the PC very well usually.
yeah. Well, and that's also probably part of the issue. When the crashes do happen, it's maybe once per day if I play it like every day, and even then, getting back into the game is not like the nice part is the crashes don't lose any progress really because you just go
Right,
right
right, right.
back. So even when
Yeah,
it has crashed, it's been like, all right, it's minorly inconvenient, but I have
not
not
game
been
breaking.
frustrated with the crashes yet. So that's how it's a testament to how much fun the game is because I have yet to be like angry that it's crashed. So that's been
Yeah,
pretty nice. Um,
yeah. It's and it's a pretty old engine that they're working with now. I think this engine goes all the way back. I mean, it clearly goes back to Dark Souls 3. I don't know how much farther
yeah.
back it goes. I imagine it's an iteration of the previous engines that they were using for Dark Souls 1 even.
Well, I
Um,
imagine this is probably just
so
the cleanest version of what they want. Well, kind of like how the game mechanics work. This engine for 3 might be the one that just is the most solid that they have the least complaints about, and they decided, well, let's just
I mean,
improve
that
on
would
that one.
explain their ability to get it out so quickly. I mean, the thing is, like, imagine giving this task to any other publisher.
Oh God.
Like, it would have taken them 12 years to build
Oh
this
yeah.
game. The size of this world and how many different mechanics and RPG stuff they got going, and like the design, the artwork,
Well, they
like
probably
this
would have
would have
tried to make
taken
their
them.
own engine because they would have seen the number of years since 3, and they would have said, well, we can't have that. But
Yeah,
that's also why FromSoft works so well is because they all understand the brand that they have, and they know that they can reuse this engine from 3 because, 1, it works. They've been working on it for so long that it makes sense to reuse it and saves money, and
yeah.
also people like it. They expect this kind of, like, combat, and this is the best version of what we have, so why would we reinvent it and potentially make it worse?
Well, they
As a
also
lot of
sort of take the
Ubisoft games do
Nintendo
too.
approach too, where like as far as appearance goes and presentation, it's more about the style and the artwork than it is about, pushing tech. So like they can
Yes.
get, especially it helps because it's a fantasy world, so just having cool artwork is even easier. Like if they were doing like a first person shooter, like a modern first person shooter, artwork isn't really going to get you by.
No.
But because
Not at
they're in a
all.
cool world where they can use imagination, like the artwork can really it can cover many manner of sins when they have really cool artwork. And this game has like fucking amazing artwork.
Oh god,
No
yeah.
doubt.
I mean, in most Dark Souls games, I always try to like stop and appreciate like well, Irithyll is obviously an easy one, but even in like 1, I was trying to like get an idea for like okay, what's actually going on here. In this game, I do it just naturally. I'm just like I
Yeah,
have to stop just to see what I'm exploring. And the open world part makes you look at that stuff more because you're trying to figure out where you're going.
yeah,
It's been great. Yeah, I'm having a great time with it so far.
yeah.
Even though I
It's
haven't done a lot of
cool.
main content, it's still good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when you get a little bit deeper in the game and you go to sort of the areas that you haven't been to yet, sort of in the northern part, because like as crazy as Limgrave and Liurnia really are, like it just there's alien ass places in
Oh,
this game.
I've seen some brief videos and screenshots of Caelid, and I think what might be the North, and I'm just like, holy shit, this
Yeah,
is
it's pretty
like
nuts.
I thought Blighttown and like all the weird stuff in the Dark Souls games were pretty bad, but I was just like, man, I'm getting more uncomfortable the more I look at this, and I know there's going to be more of it, which is going to be
Yeah,
good.
there are so many moments where like you walk in. Anyone who's played Dark Souls will know what these are like. Like you walk into a place and your jaw just drops. Like, oh my god, what the hell is that?
Oh
Kind
yeah,
of thing. Like, there's so many of those moments in
I
this
had some of
game.
that the other day, just in Liurnia.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like some of the enemy designs are like, really? How did you come up with this nonsense? This is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Like, it's like it makes you worry for the health of developers. Like, this is what you do all day. Like, you get special rewards for coming up with like these crazy ass creatures.
right. And
Fucked up.
this is coming after the previous however many Souls games. So at this point, you
Yeah,
think, oh, they must be experts at this.
yeah. You also kind of think like they must be out of ideas by now. Nope, not definitely not out of ideas. They got all kinds of crazy shit going on.
Yeah, I will say
I
for
think
as
there's
much as
something.
like I know some people have griped about like the reusing of stuff, which again I am fine with because it goes back to if it's not broke, don't fix it. But the
I
new stuff
mean,
they add on top has been really good.
here's the thing. I've been through most of the world now at this point. I just haven't seen a lot of reuse of stuff.
Well,
I mean,
right. I mean, like when they
I've
come up
seen a
with like
couple of
certain
bosses, some of the dragons, but even every one has a tweak. They're not all identical, so there's that. But
right.
also, like compared to Sekiro, that was one of the main criticisms of Sekiro that people had. There's just not. I just haven't seen that much reuse of stuff, frankly, and I think ultimately it's generally forgivable in an open world game to have some of it be
Well,
reused.
right. I mean, even in terms of like the weapons and armaments, it's like well, it makes sense to reuse straight swords because the one they work, and two, even if we're re-adding them, it's not like we're going to re-add them and not do something new with certain versions of them too. And
Yeah,
people expect that in Dark Souls. Like 1, 2, and 3 have very similar, almost use the same classes of weapons, so it just makes sense to keep doing that. But yeah, even
yeah.
like beyond that, like the monsters, the settings, everything else is like I mean, anything that could be considered reuse really is still different in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and they all got different lore behind them. That's the other thing. Like they, that's where there's a lot of depth in this game that I like, think a lot of people don't get access to because you have to think about how much time they must put into like designing the background lore of all of this shit. It's such a large world, everything has a place and a history and a background to it. Everything in the game, like you know that like the you get the sense that the FromSoft team are like, we didn't necessarily put a description in the game for this, but we know in our own headcanon what where these enemies came from and why they look like this and how they got this way, and like that's how deep it feels. Like it feels like a real living world where they've got justification for all of the stuff that they put into it. They didn't just put it in there because it's funny or
Right.
crazy.
They haven't
Like they've
dropped
got
off in
purpose.
lower quality at all.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm impressed so far. I am still getting over the disappointment that it isn't particularly revolutionary or innovative. I don't think it's
Right.
particularly innovative on the Dark Souls model, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And
So
I would agree 100%. Um,
yeah,
with all the same grievances, but yeah, I have been liking it enough so far that I think it's definitely going to be one I'm going to be playing for. It'll probably be like my main FromSoft game for a little while, at least until we decide
yeah,
to
for
go on to
sure.
Bloodborne.
Yeah, when I first booted it up and played it for a while, I was thinking I might not even finish it, but now I'm like, oh, I'll probably finish
Yeah,
it. I'm not
exactly.
even 100% now, and before I even get to New Game Plus. So
Yeah,
um,
it does the classic FromSoft hooks thing where it's like even when you think you're not going to, you probably
yeah,
will.
yeah. So for anybody out there who listens to this, if you're like in that same position where you think you might not stick with it, maybe give it another
Oh,
few hours and see if anything changes. Find yourself some new talismans and open up some game mechanics that you didn't have before, and
right.
try some different builds
Hey,
and see
Cameron.
what's what.
Yeah.
Cameron in chat.
Yeah, I think he came in pretty much right as it was ending. But yeah, I would agree. I think the best part about it is just going into it and then finding something new to try out, and then just
Yeah,
having a playground to work with.
yeah,
Really
for
is
sure.
good. Um,
Well, I don't know what the next streams are for this game for us. I know that you and Nate are still thinking about basically just sort of randomly logging on when you have time.
yeah, I
I
we
know
meant to
that
do
Fish
we meant to
wants to
do
do
more
some
of it in the
co-op.
first 2 weeks.
Mhm.
But with schedules and the way that my life was going, I didn't have a lot of time to stream with it. But I'm planning on doing more of it going forward, and probably more with this character, just for the sake of spoilers and how much I need to get ahead on my main character versus how much
Yeah.
I can do on stream.
And I
Um,
know that me personally, I wasn't planning on doing any co-op before beating the game first time. I think at this point, I'm probably okay with doing co-op if that's something you guys want to do at any
Yeah,
point.
I would be down for that.
Okay.
I know Gaming Fish has wanted to do a little bit of that, and I would be down for that. It's also why I make second characters. If I do really
Oh
want
yeah.
to play through like just the main part with no summons, I have that be
Hmm.
my main, and then I do like this guy. I just have I will summon for everything, even the stuff I know I can solo, just for the sake of playing the co-op.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I would be open to more of that. I know. I think next week we have our regular streams on Monday and Tuesday, but it's
Hmm.
one of those 3 other days. I'll probably either try to stream if Nate doesn't stream, basically.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try and have more Elden Ring content coming up. Pretty much just
Okay.
for as long as this is still in the popular culture. Probably longer than
Yeah.
that, but
I'll keep logging in at least to contribute to the discussion, and then yeah, if you guys decide that you want to do some co-op, I'll be down for that too. So
yeah. If we do, I'll probably try and like plan an actual like co-op stream. For my
yeah,
streams, especially with this character, I don't mind. I'll do co-op whenever. But if I'm ever on, yeah, feel free to hop in chat. But you can also hop into Elden Ring, and I'll set a password or something.
cool. Do some
Um,
questing, man.
yeah, exactly. I have not done co-op outside of bosses yet. It would be interesting to see what it's like for the wherever else you can summon people on.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with some. I mean, there's endless activities to do in co-op. We'll just have to like decide like let's go do
Right.
this. We're gonna go handle this dragon.
Yeah.
So
And that's
yeah,
what I'm excited for is doing more stuff like that and goofing
yeah.
off.
So
Um,
all right,
but yeah, well, thanks
cool.
anyone for watching who did watch, for tuning in for kind of an impromptu stream. We're probably going to do more of this next week. We're going to try and get more Elden Ring stuff going on, so expect to see more of that. And then
Yep.
obviously, for anyone that hasn't seen on Twitch, we do have new badges for YouTube and Discord that I put up today. So we're going to be trying to update some of the front facing stuff going forward. But yeah, thanks again, everyone. And I will talk to y'all later. We'll be back next. I don't know if we have anything going on tomorrow, but I know we'll be streaming on Monday. So we'll see y'all then.
Later.
See y'all.